Welcome to Stokastic MLB Deeper Dive. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. I'm joined today by Adam Scher. You can find him on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. And this show is sponsored by OddsShopper, which gives you the edge you need betting player props and game lines across all sports. While you're coming in, please remember to give us a like and subscribe so you can keep up with all of our shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and much more. Once you subscribe, hit that notification button to get alerts when our shows go live. Be sure to also check out today's free premium tools and data, which are MLB ownership projections. Those are kind of important. You might want to check those out. Everything we have to offer for MLB night slates on DraftKings is also 100% free for the remainder of the season, which gives you a great chance to give our tools a shot before purchasing. Just click the DK Night Owl link below to check out tonight's tools and projections. Before anybody comments on me not having a microphone still, which is true, and I did just receive a microphone in the mail from Stokastic. I got a new microphone with a stand, so got it 10 minutes ago. So I'll have it for the next show. I'll have a new microphone set up. So bear with me while I'm still talking on this thing for now. Adam, how you doing?
Doing pretty well. Really excited for the Orioles game today. Wish it was on the main slate, but Gunnar Henderson making his major league debut. If Eric's watching, he can take a shot now and get started early. But yeah, really excited for the Orioles game actually, which has nothing to do with DFS, but yeah, looking forward to that.
I saw you celebrating that on Twitter, and I gotta admit I'm not familiar with Gunnar Henderson. I don't really know what position he plays.
Shortstop, third base, number one prospect in baseball, or number two, depending on whose rankings you're looking at.
Damn, so the Orioles are going to be pretty good.
Yeah, the second number one prospect the Orioles have promoted this year.
Yeah, that's I can see why you would be excited about that. Well, before we get started, how deep are you into best ball drafts? You mentioned before the show that you were doing one.
I'm up to 135 in the whatever the $5 on DraftKings. I'm up to I think 50 in the 20, 25, whatever it is on Underdog. So I need to get like 100 more Underdog done and 15 more DraftKings done in the next week.
I've taken the opposite approach. I've been doing all of my Underdog early, and I still have most of my DraftKings left to do. Just hoping that they fuck it up again, give up a bunch of tickets to a bunch of random people. We'll see if that actually happens.
That's why I stopped at 135. I was like, if they do it, I want some teams left. I started on Underdog, did like 45, and that was in like June, and I was like, all right, I need to stop because I'm gonna end up just drafting all 150 by like the end of July. And then I kind of just like didn't pay a lot of attention to the calendar and was like, oh, now I need to just scramble and be miserable for a week.
Yeah, it's gonna be a tough week over here as well, doing a lot of drafts. All right, have you looked at the slate at all yet? Do you have any overarching thoughts? Oh, okay. So what do you think of this slate in general? Any overarching thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a slate where, like, I've talked a lot about, if you go back and look at my exposures after a slate, not always, but pretty typically, I'm either going to be concentrated on pitching and spreading it out a bit on offenses or vice versa. This strikes me as a slate where I'm probably pretty concentrated on pitching because it's not a very deep pitching slate, but you have Jacob deGrom and you have Garrett Cole, two of the best pitchers in baseball, and a pretty big talent gap between those two also. And then, there's Lance Lynn, who's getting some ownership. You have Kyle Wright, but pitching mostly kind of just sucks today. And then, so as a result, you also have a lot of good offenses and not that many pitchers that I really want to get to. So I think it's a slate where if we get a Corbin Burns-esque start where he gets lit up, got lit up by the Pirates, I'm going to be in trouble because I expect to have just a lot of exposure to a couple of pitchers here.
Yeah, that was a shitty slate for me as well. I'm just reading over the run sheet for the first time because I just steal Josh's work setting it up, and I see Jacob deGrom has a 44.7% strikeout rate so far this year. That's I have not ever seen a strikeout rate that high.
You just have to go back to last year.
Was it really that high last year?
It was 45% last year.
Jesus.
Which I didn't realize until this morning either, because Josh and I were debating Garrett Cole versus Jacob deGrom today, and I mentioned that 44.7% strikeout percentage isn't likely to be sustainable. And then I went 15 starts last year. He struck out 45%. In 2020, he struck out 38.8%.
That is absolutely absurd. I've never really looked at strikeout rate closely until I started doing shows this year. I just look at mostly projections, which incorporate that. But so now I finally have an idea of what that means. And yeah, I've never seen anything close to that high before. But yeah, I guess maybe it is sustainable. All right. I guess let's start into the games. We'll go chronologically. Starting with the Athletics at Nationals game. These are two pretty chalky, cheap stacks yesterday. Do you have any interest? We got James Caprillion on the mound and Anibal Sanchez for the Nationals. I guess let's start at pitchers. Do you have any interest in either of these guys?
So one other thing to mention, because I just pulled it up while you were talking, but to your point about the ridiculous strikeout percentage, among all qualified starting pitchers this year, Shane McClanahan leads baseball at 32.5%, Garrett Cole second at 32%. You're talking about 20, Jacob deGrom's last 20 starts now, he's averaging a 45% strikeout percentage, just completely different planet. But yeah, as far as the pitchers here, no, because the matchups are fine. Oakland's not a good offense. Washington's not a particularly good offense either. But both of these pitchers are just so bad. And I don't think you're really going to need the value here. I mean, maybe you could make the case, like, because DeGrom is 11-5 on DraftKings, maybe going to a $5,500 Anibal Sanchez helps a little bit. And I know he was getting a little bit of ownership this morning. I'm refreshing that now. I know he had like 5% projected ownership, and I would assume it's just in builds like that. Now he's actually up to 10%, which I hope I don't need. I don't really think that I will. But I would think that's kind of why people are getting there. He's just sort of like the cheapest arm that you can realistically get to, because I don't think anybody's playing $4,900 Farrell against Toronto. I would rather go to Sanchez than Tyler Alexander against the Mariners. So he's, I guess, playable just because he is like the least expensive guy, but I would really hope I don't need to get there. And then on the other side for Caprillion, he's at a price tag where you're not even getting that much in the way of savings. You have Mitch White, who's $200 more. I don't particularly like White, but I like him more than Caprillion. So maybe a little bit of Sanchez if absolutely necessary. I have a hard time getting to Caprillion for sure.
Yeah, I think the best thing that you can really say about Sanchez, he has the highest top point per dollar odds of any pitcher on DraftKings. So he has a 21.6% chance of being the top point per dollar pitcher on DraftKings at a 10.6% projected ownership. But so yeah, if you need a pitcher at 5,500, Anibal Sanchez is your guy. Otherwise, yeah, the guys at the top are going to look a lot better in terms of their actual odds.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No Seth Brown in Oakland's lineup either, which, it's one batter, but it is a guy that is actually good at hitting, and he's not in there. So makes it a little bit better for Sanchez.
You bring up Seth Brown. You talked about him a bit yesterday, so that just reminded me that I need to congratulate you on your Cal Raleigh take. That was pretty impressive. That was I didn't realize that's like his 19th or 20th home run of the year. So he's actually
he's got legitimate power. But yeah, I think that's probably the first time ever on a show that unprompted I've said someone's going to homer. So I'm just not going to do it again, and we're going to leave it there.
All right, just own it. All right. So then let's move on to these offenses. You don't like either of the pitchers, but these offenses are relatively cheap. The Nats and the Athletics. You have any interest in either of them?
Yeah, just because they are cheap and they are facing pretty bad pitchers. Like, you're going to get some ownership going here because of the value aspect, but it is a positive park upgrade for Oakland. Not having Seth Brown in the lineup certainly makes them less appealing, but they're still getting 7% ownership. We have them with a 6% chance of being the top stack. I think that looking to Shea Langoliers hitting second is a good value catcher. Tony Kemp is a reasonable value outfielder. Not that there's a shortage of those. If you have extra money, you can get Deshaun Murphy over Langoliers. That's fine as well. Those two, that does kind of make it difficult to really like a 5-man Oakland stack. The fact that on DraftKings you can't play two of the best hitters in the lineup together. But individually, they both look good. You have a 2K Chad Pinder who, has some power. Garcia's 2K. So it's just a really, really cheap team that isn't very good, but neither is Sanchez. So I can see getting there for some value. On the Washington side, they are getting a little bit less ownership than Oakland, but it has come up since this morning. Luis Garcia leading off looks like a good value. He was in my early cash game builds. Second base shortstop just makes it really easy for him to get into lineups. CJ Abrams at 2K is a decent upside play as well against a pretty bad pitcher in Caprillion. The one thing I like less about the Nats today than I did yesterday is that even though I think Caprillion's not as good a pitcher as Cole Irvin, and Cole Irvin I don't think is a great pitcher either, but I don't think Caprillion's as good. But here you do for most of the hitters on the Nats, like the whole middle of this order, or 2, 3, 4 at least, you don't have the platoon advantage, which isn't a huge deal because Caprillion's still giving up a 171 expected ISO to righties this year. But I liked him a little bit better yesterday against the pitcher, lefty and Irvin that really has given it up to righties this year. But you do still have some power upside with Meneses, Voit, Cruz, Ruiz hitting in the middle of that order too.
Okay, so little bit of interest in both. They both look pretty similar to me to how they looked yesterday, in that it kind of like Washington is kind of a muted version of Oakland in that they, their odds of being the top stack on the slate are lower than their ownership, but then they both have pretty high odds of being the top point per dollar stack on the slate just because they are so cheap. They're in decent matchups against not great pitchers. But as you said, yeah, they don't have the platoon advantage on Caprillion, so that's kind of a knock against Washington.
Yeah, I have an easier time making a case for individual hitters or for more individual hitters on the Nats, but then with the A's, it's just top to bottom, basically priced. They're like 2K. And so you're going to be able to, you can make some highly projected teams going DeGrom, Cole, A's, and then, whatever one-offs fit.
Okay. So there's some merit to potentially doing it to be able to pay up at other positions and hope for the best. All right. Anything else you want to say about this game before we move on?
Nope.
All right, then let's move on to maybe more interesting game. Cubs at Blue Jays. The Cubs have a 3.4 run implied total. Blue Jays 5.1. We've got Luke Farrell on the mound for the Cubs going up against Mitch White for Toronto. You mentioned earlier that you might have some interest in Mitch White, but tell me your level of interest in Luke Farrell or Mitch White.
0 in Luke Farrell. For one, I don't think he's capable of going particularly deep into the game. Threw about 55 pitches his last time out, and then you're getting a brutal matchup against Toronto in Toronto. For Mitch White, he's kind of just like, he's the $6,900 version of Anibal Sanchez for me. Not to compare him to Sanchez in terms of talent, but I don't think I'm going to need a lot of him. I certainly don't really want to get to him, but he's 6% owned. And if I do have a lineup where, I have Jacob deGrom and then I have some expensive bats and I have to suck it up and play a cheaper pitcher, I think Mitch White's okay. So far this year, a 17.8% strikeout percentage, 4.38 xFIP. The Cubs do have some strikeouts in their lineup. They do also have some decent bats, Suzuki, Reyes, Happ in particular. But, if the rest of your lineup is what you want and you have like 7K left to pitcher, Mitch White's fine. I don't think I end up with a lot of lineups that look like that, though.
Yeah, and being on the Blue Jays, he obviously has increased odds of getting the win here. That helps a little bit. We've got Mitch White at 5.5% projected ownership with a 16.6% chance of being one of the top 2 point per dollar pitchers on the slate, 9.6% chance of being one of the top 2 pitchers overall on the slate. So he looks pretty good on the top pitchers tool. So yeah, I think I am on the same page as you. If I need a $6,900 pitcher, I'm perfectly happy going to Mitch White. But otherwise, maybe you're going to pay up a little bit more for the DeGroms and the Coles of the world. All right. What about the offenses? How much interest do you have in the Cubs going up against Mitch White?
I don't have too much in the Cubs going up against White. Their lineup, I mentioned Suzuki, Happ, and Reyes being kind of appealing, but overall, I don't really love the lineup. You don't have Contreras today, so that waters it down a bit. McKinstry's leading off, so you have another 2K flat leadoff hitter with multi-position eligibility. But he strikes me as somebody that, like, if you're stacking the Cubs, obviously you can go there. It's going to be easy to get him in the lineups. Maybe you end up needing him in cash just to open up some value. Like, I could see going down to him maybe at second base, even though it's not my first choice, but not a particularly high upside guy, not somebody I'm really looking to get to all that frequently. Mitch White, I mentioned the relatively low strikeout percentage this year, but he has done a good job limiting power. 122 expected ISO to righties, 111 to lefties, 23.2% strikeout percentage against righties as well. So it's a case where he's been much better against righties in terms of strikeouts, and then lefties, he's not getting a lot of strikeouts, but he's still doing a decent job limiting power. So I don't have a ton of interest in the Cubs right now. We have them with a 5% chance of being the top stack, 5% aggregate ownership. So, pretty neutral stack, I think.
Okay. I'm guessing you're going to have a little bit more interest on the other side of the game. Toronto, you said you have no interest in Luke Farrell. How much interest, if any, do you have in the Blue Jays going up against Luke Farrell?
Yeah, I've quite a bit in the Jays. We have a really, really small sample size on Farrell this year. He's only thrown like 126 pitches. But if you go back to the start of the 2020 season, you get like a 700 pitch sample, 433 pitches to righties, 223 expected ISO over that time, 21% strikeout percentage, 160 expected ISO to lefties on 285 pitches. So, still not a huge sample, but somebody that we're not expecting to be particularly good. And he's facing this really, really good Toronto team. I mentioned it on my tournament plays video earlier. We had Toronto with about a 12% chance of being the top stack on DraftKings and 6% ownership. I said that I thought for sure that ownership number would come up just because the field isn't that bad. We've seen it, with teams like Atlanta's the one that stands out from like a month or so ago. Typically, when you get like a massive gap like that, enough players are paying attention now that they just play that team and that gets more ownership. Toronto's ownership has come up to 8% now. So that's at least like a believable number. I still wouldn't be surprised if you see them get a little bit more popular, but they are relatively expensive, and it is a slate where DraftKings actually priced up the two best pitchers. So that's something we haven't seen a lot this year, and it does change the dynamic a little bit. You've had so many slates where you would be able to say like, oh yeah, well, I'm just going to play DeGrom, Cole, and the Blue Jays. There are enough minimum salary hitters on other teams that you can probably still make decent versions of that, but it does make it a little bit more difficult to get to them, and does, I think, probably drive their ownership down a little bit. They have 6 of their top 7 hitters are at least $5,000 on DraftKings, the exception being Lourdes Gurriel hitting 3rd. So they are a team where I think you're going to have to sacrifice somewhere to get to, and as a result, they probably will not get quite as much ownership as they otherwise would.
I said it yesterday that I kind of hate it when we have slates like this where it's just so obvious based on the top stacks tool who you should play, where it's like you just look at the top of the board and the teams with the highest top stack odds are not getting quite the ownership that they should, projected ownership, because I always worry about them getting a little bit more steam. I love finding like I guess Boston would be a good example in this case, is a team that I love to target with a 1.9% projected ownership, 5.1% chance of being the top stack. I don't think people see that as easily, like as quickly as seeing like, just look at the top of the board. The top stack odd teams, they have positive leverage and the highest top stack odds. So I think that, yeah, that's always a concern for me with these teams that look really good and have the highest top stack odds. I think that there is some concern that they are going to get a little bit of steam. But yeah, it's a good point that with the top pitchers being as good as they are today, that maybe it could hold.
Yeah, I mean, like, so for example, if you plug in DeGrom and Cole on DraftKings, you have $3,462 per position. It's going to be tough to make like actually, you probably can't make the Blue Jay stack that you like really want. You could throw in Kevin Biggio at 2,400 and some min salary guys from elsewhere. But if you go, Cole and Lynn, then you're getting around $4,000, 3,900 per position. That's going to open it up to where you can probably stack the Blue Jays with some shitty bats around them.
Yeah, makes sense. Adam, we are getting people, they really want your home run. Are you sure that you're not willing to give another home run pick? We got Fanatic, Drat both saying we need a home run segment tonight. Is there anything they could do, an amount of likes that people could give that would get you to give your home run pick for tonight?
No, man, I'm retiring at 100%.
You're retiring it. All right. Sorry, guys. There's nothing you can do. If we get to 200 likes, I'll give you my home run pick, but I have a 0% success rate so far. I'm a 0 for 0. So I guess I have I don't know what you call that exactly. I'm not a math guy, but I, you can't trust mine quite to the same extent as you can trust Adam's after last night. Undefined, yeah, that's what you'd see in Excel. All right. Anything else you want to say about this game before I do a read?
No, go ahead and do your read.
All right, guys, let me tell you about the Stokastic Plus Platinum Pass. You can get access to all the great Stokastic Plus tools and content for nearly every DFS sport out there with a Stokastic Plus Platinum Pass. This includes full access to all the premium content and tools on Stokastic.com, including player projections, ownership projections, lineup builder, our premium Discord channel, and much more. Now, if you're a new Stokastic Plus user, then you can save 50% on your first week of any Stokastic Plus pass. All you have to do is click the link in the video description below to activate this offer, or you can head to our join page and use promo code MLBDD. Again, that's use promo code MLBDD on our join page. It's all caps, one word, for 50% off your first week of any weekly package. If you only want to play MLB DFS, that's perfectly fine. Head to our MLB weekly checkout page instead and use this code to get 50% off your first week of our MLB package. Again, this is for new users only. Please note that Fantasy Cruncher is an add-on and is not included in our base packages, but can easily be added at checkout. Join Stokastic Plus today. All right, Adam, we've got two teams with pretty low totals for really good offenses. The Dodgers have a 3.1 run implied total. The Mets have a 3.7 run implied total. I guess the Dodgers total makes sense because they are going up against Jacob deGrom, who we have been talking about, and then Tyler Anderson on the mound for the Dodgers. Let's just start there with Anderson and deGrom. Let's start with Anderson. Let's start with Anderson first. Do you have interest in Anderson going up against the Mets?
Not really. I will say that I think he's going under-owned. We have him projected for about 2% ownership with a 10% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. So it's one of those where if I need a pitcher in that price range and I happen to have like a popular team, so I don't want 44% owned Lance Lynn or 20% owned Joe Ryan, I think you can go to Tyler Anderson. Like relative to those two pitchers, I think he is certainly under-owned, but he's also a relatively low probability play. I don't like the matchup against the Mets. Tough team to strike out, team full of good hitters. Anderson himself is a perfectly fine pitcher. Not a great strikeout pitcher, though, only a 19.6% strikeout percentage to righties. So, yeah, he's kind of just like a last guy in if I need a contrarian pitcher in his price range, but there's nothing that stands out about why I think he'll be particularly good.
Okay. On the other side of it, we've got Jacob deGrom. We mentioned the 45% strikeout rate going back to last year. So he's got an insane strikeout rate, but he also has one of the toughest matchups he could possibly have against the Dodgers. How much concern do you have about the matchup here for deGrom?
A good amount. I mean, it's the Dodgers, but Josh and I were talking about it this morning. Like, this is such an unusual situation because one, deGrom's price is actually relatively correct. 11.5 on DraftKings. He's up to 12K on FanDuel. So you're not getting a discount here. You have an absolutely brutal matchup against the Dodgers. But, and then on top of that, the other pitchers that are good, particularly, Garrett Cole's facing the Angels, Kyle Wright's facing the Rockies outside of Coors, Lynn is only 8K. So it's not like the other good pitchers have bad matchups or are mispriced. So all of that's working against DeGrom. But the gap in talent between him and just everybody else on the planet is so big that I still want to get there. But then, like, it's so weird taking a 46% expensive pitcher against the Dodgers. So it's a really weird spot, but I think I still just get a lot of him. Looking at the top stacks tool, we have top pitchers tool. We have DeGrom with a 39% chance of being a top two pitcher, also an 11% chance of being a top two value at $11,500, 46% ownership. I mean, that's all. When you put those together, I think you're actually kind of getting an under-owned DeGrom. So I said it at the top of the show, I think it's very likely I just end up really concentrated on top end pitching here. I think that's just likely to be the case. And if DeGrom has a bad start, then oh well.
I just answered Larry C's question in chat. He asked me what my cap on pitchers will be, and oftentimes I'll just set a universal cap and just take whatever Fantasy Cruncher gives me. I told him that I'll probably do 40%, which would be underweight on DeGrom, but I'm not confident that that's what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll do 40% and then lift DeGrom up to 50 or 60, and maybe Cole the same because he's got the better matchup. I don't know. I haven't totally decided, but yeah, it's a really weird situation because I'm like, the Dodgers scare me against any pitcher, but also if you're throwing strikeouts 45% of the time, they're not hitting the ball anyway. So I don't know. It's a tough situation with these pitchers. But anyway, so you have a lot of interest in DeGrom. You think you're going to be overweight to DeGrom at 46%?
I would expect to be, yeah. And here's the other thing. And I kind of mentioned it that I think DeGrom's kind of going under-owned when you factor everything in. And I mean this rhetorically, not because you said you might be underweight, but like, what pitchers do you have any level of confidence in that aren't popular? Like Garrett Cole's getting the same ownership. So it's not like you can make the case where you're saying like, oh, well, I'm just going to play Garrett Cole and he's half of DeGrom's ownership. Lance Lynn's getting the same ownership. Obviously a different price range, but it's not like you're saving ownership by going to Lance Lynn. You're saving it by going to Kyle Wright, but let's not pretend he's remotely close to DeGrom or Cole in terms of talent. Joe Ryan is still getting 20% ownership. After that, you're down to guys like Patrick Sandoval against the Yankees, Tyler Anderson against the Mets, Mitch White in terms of top pitcher percentage. So I just don't even know where you go pitching wise. Like if you're afraid to play DeGrom, I don't know where you go where you're comfortable and not eating a ton of ownership anyway.
Yeah, that is a very good point. As I'm looking through these other pitchers on the slate, there are none that I'm super confident in playing. So maybe I'll set a little bit higher and just eat the DeGrom and hope that he gets me to 24, 25 fantasy points, and you probably need more than that at 11,500. But he is the safest today, so I don't know. Let's move on to the other side of the game. We've talked about DeGrom enough. What about the Dodgers? They're 3.1 run implied total. Obviously, as tough a matchup as you can find against DeGrom. Are you going to be playing any Dodgers stacks today or one-offs?
I would be very, very surprised. The Dodgers are on that list of teams where, I do think if you played them every single time they're low owned and just ignored the pitcher, you probably come out ahead by the end of the season because of how good they are. But that hasn't been my strategy this year. I don't just pick a team and do it. So I have a really difficult time getting to the Dodgers, obviously, because DeGrom's great. But you're also not even getting any sort of a discount. We back in the day, you used to get like dynamic pricing on DraftKings where, if Jacob DeGrom was 11.5, you would have $4,200 Mookie Betts or $4,500 Mookie Betts and 4K Freddie Freeman. And it would at least be a conversation where it's like, all right, I can make a really high upside team here because I can get the Dodgers plus a bunch of good one-offs. And then you just hope that the Dodgers have a good game. But here, getting to the Dodgers, you're not only taking hitters against DeGrom, but you're also sacrificing elsewhere in your lineup for the privilege of taking hitters against DeGrom. It just makes it insanely difficult for me to do.
Yeah, I look at the top stacks tool, and it tells me that I should have some interest. They're getting actually, I read that wrong. I thought they were getting 0.3% ownership. They're getting 1.1% ownership with a 1.8% chance of being the top stack on the board. So that would tell me I should have some interest. But yeah, I hear you. That's it's asking a lot at their prices. They would have to do really well in a really tough matchup. And obviously the Dodgers, they can do it. That's why they have 1.8% top stack odds. But there are a lot of other spots that I think I would prefer to attack. So yeah, I think I'm with you. I'm not going to get a ton of the Dodgers here. What about the Mets on the other side going up against Tyler Anderson? Any interest there?
More than the Dodgers, but still not really. I think he's a solid enough pitcher. 134 expected ISO to righties. Certainly not going to talk anyone off of, Starling Marte, Lindor, Alonso, Those guys are all really good. Ruff and Kana are pretty cheap. Right now in the top stacks tool, we have them as the third lowest top stack percentage at 2%, 1% ownership. So technically going under-owned, but also pretty low probability.
Okay. Anything else you want to say about this game before we move on?
Nope.
All right. Up next, we've got the Mariners at the Tigers. The Mariners have a 4.7 run implied total. Tigers 3.8. We've got Marco Gonzalez on the mound for the Mariners. Tyler Alexander for Detroit. Any interest in Gonzalez or Alexander here?
Not really. You could make some sort of ownership case, I guess, for Gonzalez just because he's facing the Tigers. He's projected for a 6% chance of being top two, 1% ownership. But again, pitchers like that I typically don't get to very frequently. Maybe I end up with like 2% or something, but nothing really worth mentioning. And then on the other side, Alexander, I think, is pretty obviously one of the worst options on the slate.
Yeah. I'm kind of surprised to see that Marco Gonzalez only getting 1%. I feel like usually even bad pitchers against Detroit, people just throw them out there. I guess he's not cheap enough. That's the problem. He's 73.
Yeah, I think that's
so
the thing
don't
is the
want
price
to
tag.
take that chance. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I think I'm probably on the same page as you. Not a ton of interest in either of the pitchers. What about the other? I mean, pretty bad pitchers. Do you have any interest? We'll start with the Mariners. How much interest do you have in the Mariners?
I like the Mariners a lot. They made my top three stacks in both my DraftKings and FanDuel tournament plays videos earlier. DraftKings, they're relatively expensive, but we still have them with a 9% chance of being the top stack, 9% ownership, and they do have a higher top value percentage than all three of the teams ahead of them in top stack percentage. So they're at least a little bit easier to get to. You do get some cheap bats towards the bottom of the order that can help round out your stacks. Julio Rodriguez obviously looks fantastic. 6,200 on DraftKings is fine. He's 3,600 on FanDuel. So just happened to notice that when I was building my dummy lineup earlier. But great value option on FanDuel. Great pay up option if you can get to him on DraftKings. But then, Ty France is reasonably priced on DraftKings. I think the whole team is just cheaper on FanDuel. But on DraftKings, like Rodriguez, France, Haniger, Suarez is relatively expensive, and you can't play your 2 and 5 hitter together with France and Santana. But if you need to save some money, you can go to Santana instead of France, even though he's not as exciting a hitter. Cal Raleigh sub 4K, hasn't been as good from the right side as the left side, but still a catcher hitting sixth. And then the bottom of the order, Frazier 3,300, Toro 2K, Haggerty 2K. Worth noting, only one lefty in the lineup in Adam Frazier, but Tyler Alexander has been bad against everybody. So you can treat Adam Frazier as you would normally treat Adam Frazier. It's not like I'm saying he's like a great player or anything, but I wouldn't shy away from it just because it's lefty-lefty. 221 expected ISO to lefties this year, 204 to righties. So it's a team where, from a full stack perspective, I think you can do enough to balance out some of those salaries at the top that they look really good. And it is a positive park shift for them getting out of Seattle.
For sure. Is Cal Raleigh going to homer today?
I'm not going to answer that. I will say
I'm doing the best I can, guys.
I will say that since 2020, he has 117 right-handed plate appearances, 112 expected ISO. I don't remember what the number was left-handed, but it was started with a 2 for sure.
Okay. On the other side of the game, Detroit looks kind of similar to me to Oakland and the Nationals, where they don't have really high odds of being the top stack on the board, but they have pretty good value odds of being the top value stack on the board. Do you have any interest in Detroit going up against Marco Gonzalez?
Yes, some. They are getting less ownership than Oakland, which makes them kind of appealing. They don't have quite the same top value percentage, but I think once you're talking 13% versus 25%, you kind of can just make whatever team you want with either stack. So they look okay. Eric Haas, 3,300. Wish he was hitting a little bit higher in the order, but he's hitting sixth. But he does have power as a catching option. Victor Reyes still hitting second, 2,300. Baez looks fine. Miggy's 2K, do with that what you will. Not my favorite stack, but they're in the mix with Oakland at a little bit lower ownership.
Okay. Anything else that you want to say about this game before we move on?
Nope.
All right, guys, let me tell you about our sponsor, OddsShopper. You can make your best bets in 30 seconds or less with OddsShopper. With hundreds of bets featured daily, OddsShopper gives you the edge you need betting player props and game lines across all sports. Sign up for free now via the link in the video description below to gain access to our proprietary data, which will help you make your best bets. Again, I said that's free. With expected win percentages and ROIs included, OddsShopper uses the same DFS projections we use here at Stokastic to filter out the best bets available. OddsShopper also features a parlay builder with optimized parlays and an arbitrage tool that identifies risk-free, guaranteed profit bets that you can make across sports books. All right. This is a little bit lopsided. We've got the Rockies with a 3.2 run implied total. The Braves have a 5.3 run implied total. Ryan Feltner on the mound for Colorado, Kyle Wright for the Braves. Let's start with the pitchers. Do you have any interest at all in Ryan Feltner against the Braves?
Absolutely not.
Okay, easy. Do you have any interest in Kyle Wright going up against the Rockies?
Yeah, I do. I think that relative, like his salary relative to Cole and DeGrom, I think he's overpriced, but that's also going to drive down the ownership. Like if you look at the pitchers that are getting some ownership on the slate, you look at the top four in top two pitcher percentage, so DeGrom, Cole, Wright, and Lynn. Wright's getting like 1/3 the ownership of any of the rest of them. And I think he should be the lowest owned of the group because he's not DeGrom, he's not Cole, and Lynn is $1,800 less expensive. But Wright's a good pitcher. He has a 24% strikeout percentage, 3.3 xFIP, 3.56 FIP. Really good matchup against the Rockies, who outside of Coors Field this year have a 78 WRC plus. Just an absolutely awful team. Once you get past Randall Grichuk in this lineup, I literally have no idea who these people are, which I guess means they could be good, but I doubt that they are. It's just it's a bad lineup. You have a 2.8 implied run total for the Rockies. So I think that Wright is a good tournament option at that ownership. Cash games, I'm certainly just getting to Cole and DeGrom or maybe Lynn if I have to, but not Wright. But in tournaments, I do like the lack of ownership coming into Kyle Wright.
Yeah, I mean, he's slightly lower top two odds than Lance Lynn. He is fourth on our board right now, but the top three guys, DeGrom, Cole, and Lynn, all have 43+% projected ownership. Kyle Wright down at 16.3. So that definitely is appealing to me as well in a large field.
And it's the same thing on FanDuel too. 20% coming to DeGrom, 28 to Cole. Kind of surprised by that, but that's a different story. 25 to Lynn, 5 to Kyle Wright. For example, we have a 7% chance of Kyle Wright being the top scoring pitcher. We have Cole with a 12% chance. So we can even round up and say that, Cole is twice as likely to be the top scoring pitcher as Kyle Wright, but he's getting 7 times the ownership. So, it's a spot where Kyle Wright should never be $300 less than Garrett Cole, especially when Cole also has a good matchup. But within any one tournament lineup, that's a pretty easy spot to pivot if you need to. If you are playing popular bats, that's a fine spot to just say, all right, whatever, I will take 7-1 odds on Kyle Wright beating Garrett Cole today.
Yep, I agree. That makes a lot of sense. I haven't looked at FanDuel much at all, but sounds like he's even maybe more appealing on FanDuel than on DraftKings. All right, let's move on to the stacks though. Do you have any interest in the Rockies going up against Kyle Wright?
No, I do individually like Ryan McMahon and Charlie Blackmon. They are the only two left-handed bats in this lineup that I have heard of. Michael Toglia is a switch hitter, but actually trying to get to his Fangraphs page right now. Pretty sure he's not any good though. But Reynolds or Blackmon and McMahon, I like both of them. Michael Toglia on Fangraphs, the 38th prospect in the Rockies system. Doesn't even have a steamer projection on Fangraphs. 7 home runs, 424 ISO at AAA this year and 75 at bats, 231 at AA, but pretty sure all of those teams play like on top of a mountain. So don't read too much into that. Point being, I think that where Wright has struggled a little bit this year, he has allowed a 183 expected ISO to lefties. So, and you do actually have a little bit of a reduced price tag on Ryan McMahon and Charlie Blackmon from where they normally are. So those two individually kind of seem interesting, but outside of that, I don't have interest in the Rockies.
Okay, so more likely to play some one-offs than play a full 5-man stack?
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say necessarily likely. I mean, I wouldn't be
Okay.
surprised at all if I just don't get Ryan McMahon, but
Yeah.
Him and Blackmon do at least just kind of stand out at that price where it's like, okay, especially with McMahon leading off.
Okay. Adam, have you ever tried the pole vault, like on a track?
No.
Okay, people are talking about it in track because Tyler mentioned his broken back. We talked about it a little bit before the show, and now I see somebody in chat saying he knows a guy that lost a testicle to a pole vaulting accident. I already was not interested in trying the pole vault, and now I am.
I thought you were going to say you already lost a testicle.
Yeah,
no.
Thankfully, I have not lost any testicles.
Never lost a testicle. Thank the Lord. Did give myself a few concussions. Missed the pit a few times. Ran into the big metal things. I missed my aiming point. It led to the injuries.
Yeah, it's not something that has ever like appealed to me. Like I want to try doing that. I'm really impressed by it. I love watching other people do it because it's really like fun to watch. But yeah, I have never. I'm not as crazy as Tyler, and I definitely not going to try it now if I know that you can lose a testicle. Let's talk about the Braves. The Braves have a 5.3 run implied total up against Ryan Feltner. How much interest do you have there?
A lot. They are So they're projected to be the second highest owned stack behind the White Sox, which is weird. Like, I mean, the White Sox are a good value stack. We'll talk about them, but like Atlanta got a crazy amount of ownership yesterday, even more than I think we had expected. And I didn't get to them even at their projected ownership. I think you could see a similar thing today, but if I'm the thing that's going to make Atlanta tough for me is that they're projected for a lot of ownership, and I like popular pitchers, so I might have a hard time making all of that work together. But outside of roster construction issues like that, I certainly like the Braves. If you can make lineups that are contrarian enough with the Braves, I would certainly recommend it. Feltner 210 expected ISO to lefties, 225 to righties this year. You got Ronald Acuna back, so you have the Acuna, Swanson, Riley, Olsen top of the order. William Contreras hitting fifth. No d'Arnaud makes them a little bit easier to stack as well, since you don't have d'Arnaud and Contreras both in the lineup. Michael Harris hitting sixth. Vaughn Grissom seven gives you some value. So the Braves, I think, look great. I actually like them. Like in terms of top stack percentage, we have them third behind the Phillies and Toronto. I personally like them a little bit more, but still, that ownership is problematic if you're not able to find a way to balance it out elsewhere in your lineup.
Yeah, they have higher ownership than the two teams ahead of them in the top stack. So I just refreshed it, and they're up to 13% projected ownership for the stack. But yeah, it's a scary team. If you're fading the Braves, that is definitely scary because they are in a great matchup. That's a great team, top to bottom, pretty much, and they have the 5.3 run implied total.
And the other thing that's kind of that just makes it tough for tournaments with putting together a full lineup that you like is Acuna, Riley, Olsen, Swanson, Contreras, all projected for double-digit ownership. Harris is at 9%. Grissom and Grossman are both at like 7%. So it's just difficult to even find pieces that you want to get to that like offset that ownership. It's if you play the Braves, you're just playing 15 to 20% on guys across the board, and then presumably pairing them with popular pitching. And so that's the issue that I think I might run into. But if not, I would love to get to Atlanta.
Yeah, I've noticed that you've made that point on shows recently, and it's not something that I factored in, that like individual batters can have such high ownership that they really bring up like the stack ownership, and that kind of if you just go to other batters, you can still make interesting stacks. That's something that I have not started looking at probably as much as I should, because that's a really interesting point that sometimes it can be a little bit misleading, the top stack ownership, just because if one bat is getting a ton of ownership, that kind of changes things.
Yeah, I mean the opposite example is the Yankees last night. Their top stack percentage I think was a little bit higher than their top stack odds, but in the actual tournament you had Aaron Judge like 18%, and like everybody else on the Yankees was like 6% owned.
Yeah, that was I played some Yankees yesterday. All right, anything else that you want to say about this game before we move on?
Nope.
All right, then let's move on to the Red Sox at the Twins. Michael Wacha on the mound for the Red Sox, Joe Ryan for the Twins. The Red Sox have a 3.8 run implied total, the Twins at 4.2. Let's start with the pitchers. How much interest, if any, do you have in Michael Wacha and or Joe Ryan?
I don't anticipate getting to Wacha at 8,700. I don't think he's a bad pitcher, but 19.5% strikeout percentage, 4.09 xFIP, just a higher price tag than I anticipate paying. Joe Ryan makes some sense here. Overall this year, he has a 24.2% strikeout percentage, does have a 4.4 xFIP, has allowed 1.35 home runs per 9 innings. I don't love the ownership, and I don't really like the matchup. I think if you were getting lower ownership, I would like using him as a pivot to Lance Lynn. But as is, he's getting 20% ownership anyway. So I think it's just likely again that I just sort of end up getting those 4 top pitchers. Ryan does have drastic splits between righties and lefties this year as well. He's striking out 30.5% of righties with a 145 expected ISO, only 17.7% of lefties with a 192 expected ISO. The Red Sox lineup is pretty balanced, but Verdugo from the left side, difficult to strike out. Devers obviously insanely good from the left side. Bogarts is tough to strike out. JD and Story are both just good hitters, even though they are right-handed. So there is certainly upside here for Ryan. Actually, I take it back. They do not have a balanced lineup today. They're running 7 righties out there. So that actually makes it better for Ryan. The bottom of this order, he is pretty likely to carve up Hernandez, Dahlbeck, Plawecki at the bottom. So yeah, it makes Ryan project a little bit better, I think, actually, this lineup. But still, I don't love the ownership coming in there. We have him with like a 13.5% chance of being a top 2 pitcher at 20% ownership. Not a spot that I really love against Boston.
Okay, and you said that you don't have much interest in Michael Wacha at 8,700. All right, then let's move on to the stacks. Boston, I mentioned earlier, is a stack that was not getting a ton of ownership. They had higher top stack odds. I wonder if that was before the lineup came out, but I'm just going to refresh and see if it has come down a little bit, their top stack odds, but still really low ownership. How much interest do you have in the Red Sox going up against Joe Ryan?
I like the Red Sox at this ownership. It's a spot, again, where I don't necessarily think it's super likely they have success against Ryan. And I do hate the bottom of the order that they're running out. But 1 through 6, or I mean, you can say what you want about Pham. Verdugo doesn't really have power. But Bogarts, Devers, Martinez, Story, we know those guys can all do damage. Verdugo's cheap. Pham, at least has some power. So 1 through 6, I like. I wish that they had more lefties, but at very low ownership, I'm just willing to take my chances. Rafael Devers individually, I really like. He's only projected for about 6% ownership on DraftKings. Every other hitter on the team is 2% or less. So given that ownership, I like getting to them against Ryan. If they were to start getting 5-6% ownership, I would probably back off.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense to me. And they're a team that really does stand out to me as a team that I'm probably going to want to play in my stacks today, just because 1.8% projected ownership, that is really low. So I'm going to take advantage of that. And, I don't want to say I'm going to hope for them to do well against Joe Ryan and my Twins, but for the sake of my stacks, that's probably what I'll be hoping for. What about the other side of it? Do you have any interest in the Twins going up against Waka?
Yeah, I'm interested in them too, just because they're getting 4% ownership. We have them with about a 4% chance of being the top stack. I don't love the lineup they're running out there either. They still don't have Polanco, who's missed the last couple of games. Of course, they don't have Buxton either. For some unknown reason, Nick Gordon is now batting 7th. I still think he's fine in tournaments. He did get second base eligibility on DraftKings in addition to outfield, which makes it easier to get to him. He's been hitting the ball hard all season long, so I do like him. I just have no idea why he's hitting 7th. Miranda, Correa both look good. Kepler is cheap. That's the nicest thing I can say about him. You have Kyle Garlick hitting 5th, which again, it's weird. I get it in the sense that Michael Wacha, not really this season. He's only allowed a 157 expected ISO to righties this year. But in the past, he has had power issues to righties. If you go back to the start of last year, 202 expected ISO. Start of 2020, 208 expected ISO. So I'm guessing Minnesota just thinks that he's a reverse splits pitcher and wants to get another right-handed bat in there. I have no idea why he's hitting ahead of Nick Gordon, but it does give you another cheap bat hitting 5th. Like, you can stack this team for pretty cheap if you go, Miranda, Kepler, Garlick, Ursula, Gordon, or even Correa instead of one of those guys. You're going to get a pretty cheap stack that does have plenty of upside here against a middle of the road pitcher in Waka.
Okay. Anything else you want to say about Red Sox at Twins game?
Nope. Mostly bats for me. And then I think Joe Ryan's fine. I just don't love the ownership, but I do like the lineup that he's facing.
Yeah, it's a better Red Sox lineup for him than you would normally see. So yeah, some reason to play Joe Ryan there. 24.2% strikeout rate is not bad. So I'll probably try to play some Joe Ryan today, but I don't really love targeting the Red Sox, and I think I'd rather take more of the other side of the game as well. All right, let's move on to the Royals at the White Sox. Royals have a 3.6 run implied total. White Sox 4.8. Chris Bubich on the mound. I think I'm pronouncing that. Chris Bubich
Yep.
for the Royals, going up against Lance Lynn on the White Sox. How much, if any, interest? I know you're going to have some interest in Lance Lynn. He is getting crazy ownership. Do you think you're going to be matching the field at their 45% ownership or whatever it is, 43% on Lance Lynn?
I doubt it. I haven't crunched lineups, but my guess is that I end up very heavy on DeGrom, Cole. I think Lynn and Wright are like the next 2 pitchers I get to, and then Ryan is in that category as well. But I think that there's enough cheap bats on this slate that it's very likely I end up just jamming in what I think are clearly the top 2 pitchers. Like, for example, median projection obviously isn't everything in MLB or any sport, but we have DeGrom right now projected for 24 DraftKings points. We have Cole for just shy of 22. Then you get like a 5-point drop to Kyle Wright, and Lynn is just behind that. I think it's likely that, I'm trying to balance out ownership and projection more or less. I think it's likely that my top lineups just end up being like a bunch of different combinations where I have DeGrom and Cole.
Yeah, that makes sense. The only reason I'm just so scared of the matchup for DeGrom. Otherwise, I'm like, man, if that 45% strike rate against almost any other team, I would love to get there. I mean, I'm still going to get at least 40%. Whatever I set my cap up at, I'm going to get that much of DeGrom. I think it'll be probably 40%. Maybe I'll set it 50%. But so I think that I'll get more of some of these other pitchers than you do, because you're going to be allowing yourself to get more, but haven't decided yet how much exactly. What about the other side of it? Do you have any interest in Chris Wu? Isn't that a thing for you? Like you play Kansas City pitchers a lot. How much, if
I
any?
play anybody in a Kansas City uniform a lot.
Okay,
apparently.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't want to get to Chris Bubich. I don't particularly like the matchup here. It is worth noting, that they still don't have Luis Robert. They don't have Yohan Moncada. They did get Grandal back. Elvis Andrus is leading off. Like, this team was supposed to be a playoff contender this year, and they have Elvis Andrus leading off at the end of August. But Bubic actually hasn't been horrible against righties this year. He's been god awful against lefties, which is weird. But 20.2% strikeout percentage against righties, 157 expected ISO, 6,200, 1% ownership. I would think that I get over the field on Bubic. I am hoping, and I don't think it'll be any crazy number, but like Anibal Sanchez getting 12% ownership, Chris Bubic getting 1. I am fine just getting Chris Bubic if I need to pay down.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Just the lack of ownership makes him sort of interesting, even in a kind of tough matchup against the White Sox.
Yeah, like I'll be perfectly fine if I have 0. I just know how it's gone for me all year. So the way I put it this morning was I assume I'm going to be over the field on Bubic. I don't necessarily recommend anyone else trying to do that, but if you need a $6,200 pitcher, I think he's playable.
All right. You just can't help yourself. You just love the Royals too much.
Yeah, it's been a problem.
Is that problem going to come up on the stack side? Are you going to be playing the Royals against Lance Lynn and trying to get some leverage on his ownership at all? How much interest in the Royals as a stack today?
I'm pretty confident I'll end up with a lot of Kansas City here because, for one, I just always do. But they're projected to go a little bit under-owned here. And the reason I get to so much Kansas City frequently, and it's going to be, I can almost guarantee it's going to be the case today because Bobby Witt Jr. is the highest projected owned guy on the team at 6%. They have such a good combination of multi-position eligible guys and cheap guys and talent. Like I think it's easy to overlook because Kansas City's had offensive struggles this year, but MJ Melendez is a very good hitting prospect. Bobby Witt is one of the best prospects in baseball. Salvador Perez is good. Nick Pratto is a top 100 prospect. Michael A. Taylor has some speed and last night hit a home run, but still has like a 100 ISO this year. Michael Massey projects as a league average hitter. The bottom of the order is not very good, but they are still cheap. And you have, Dozier, third base outfield. You have Lopez, second base shortstop. Not that I really love getting to either of those guys, but it just makes it so you can make like any combination of teams, lineups that you want around them. If you have a 5-man stack and you need a contrarian third base shortstop, Bobby Witt. If you need, a catcher, you have Melendez or Perez. If you 5-man stack Kansas City, you can fit in pretty much whatever one-offs you want between how cheap they are and the fact that you can just move them around between a million different positions. And then on top of that, they're low owned. And I don't particularly factor it into my process, but it's an added bonus that the guy they're facing is going to get 40% ownership.
Yeah, I certainly love the ownership. I think I'm going to be right there with you with Kansas City. I think I'm going to be going over the field. They look great in the top stacks tool, coming in at 3.1% projected ownership with a 3.6% chance of being the top stack on the board and a 5.7% chance of being the top value stack on the board. And that 43% ownership on Lance Lynn does appeal to me just as a leverage spot. So I think that I will be getting above the field on Kansas City with you today. I don't always join you in your Kansas City love, but I think that in this spot I will. And I don't know if this is accurate. I think of Lance Lynn as being a hit or miss kind of a pitcher. Like, he does have blow up games from time to time. I should probably look that up to verify.
Well, it's also he has drastic splits, and he has for most of his career. He went through like a 2-year stretch where he alleviated it, but he's back to being normal this year. 32% strikeout percentage against righties, 164 expected ISO. So not a ton of power, but also a decent amount. Like, he used to just not give it up at all to righties. But against lefties, 175 expected ISO, only a 20% strikeout percentage. So strikeout percentage against lefties is like 12 points lower than it is against righties. Makes it look even better for Melendez, Pratto, Massey. Lopez and Waters will be hitting left-handed too, but they don't deserve the same sort of mention. And then, from the right side, like, he's really good, but you have Bobby Witt, you have Salvador Perez, Michael A. Taylor probably strikes out 5 times, but it's that kind of is the thing too. It's not just Kansas City's cheap and has multi-position eligibility. You do have a pitcher that struggles with left-handed bats, and you do have a few quality lefties here.
Yeah. I think we're on the same page there. On the other side, so we haven't talked about the White Sox. They have the 4.8 run implied total, better matchup against Chris Bubic. How much interest do you have in the White Sox today?
At this ownership, not a lot. I understand why they're getting it because they are 5th in top stack percentage, but they're also 3rd in top value percentage. Their prices are really, really cheap, and Bubic overall isn't very good. I already mentioned that he has actually been decent against right-handed bats this year, but it's a negative park shift for him. You have a 5 implied run total on the White Sox. You have basically a free shortstop leading off in Andrews. You have multi-position eligibility in Andrew Vaughn. Jose Abreu is cheap and good. Jimenez is cheap and at one point was good. I don't really know what he is at this point. AJ Pollock is cheap. Grandal's cheap. Like this whole team is just free. I mentioned it also. Gavin Sheets, the only lefty in the lineup. Not going out of my way to target him, but Bubic has been absolutely torched by lefties in a small sample this year. So if you are stacking the White Sox, I would say don't just like skip over Gavin Sheets. He's still fine. But the ownership is what's concerning to me. Like there's plenty of other value teams I can get to that are a lot lower owned. And this is another team where we have Elvis Andrus leading the way at 18% ownership, but there are 7 of their 9 hitters projected for between 10 and 18% ownership. The only guys sub 10% are Grandal and Sheets. So you can certainly use those guys to help balance out your ownership. But presumably if I'm going to the White Sox value, it's so I can get to DeGrom, Cole. So again, now I just have a lineup where I have, 3 to 5 double-digit owned hitters combined with 2 50% owned pitchers. I'm overlapping a lot of the field at that point.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page with you here as well. Not a lot of interest in the White Sox. They, as you said, they are the 5th team in terms of their top stack odds. So, just without looking at ownership, they are a team that has high odds of success, but they are just going over owned, and there are other spots that I like better. So I think I am going to be maybe even full fading the White Sox as my primary stack, not as one-offs. I'll probably get to plenty of White Sox as one-offs and secondary stacks if I do them, but I think that I might full fade them as my primary stack just because the ownership is a little bit too high for me.
Normally don't care about narratives, but Clayton SQ said the Sox will probably kill without Tony La Russa there. If I'm going to buy into a random narrative, I don't have any trouble actually believing that.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I think coach narratives are real, so it could be a real thing. Yeah, it's a good tip there. All right, anything else you want to say about this game before we move on?
No, just uncomfortable amounts of Kansas City for me again, I would think.
Nice. All right, guys, fantasy football season is in full swing, which means that it's time to dominate your draft. There's no better way to start than with our Stokastic Fantasy Football and Best Ball YouTube channels. Click below to subscribe to those channels and turn on notifications for daily videos from our team of fantasy football experts, which will give you the edge you need when drafting this season. I highly recommend those videos. That we've got a lot of videos coming out right now, and they are not the most popular videos, not the most popular channel just yet. So I think this is kind of where you can take advantage of people not really seeing the videos as much as they probably should, given the amount of talent we've got on our team giving you advice. So highly recommend joining the Stokastic Fantasy Football and Best Ball YouTube channels. All right, let's move on to, we've got Yankees at Angels. The Yankees have a 4.4 run implied total, Angels 3.2. Garrett Cole on the mound for the Yankees, Patrick Sandoval for the Angels. We've talked about Cole a little bit. I know you have some interest, but how much Cole do you think you're going to be getting to?
A lot. I think it's very likely, at least at the current ownership levels, I think it's very likely I end up over the field on both of DeGrom and Cole.
Okay, that makes sense to me. And the current ownership level, at least to my last refresh, was 46.3% projected ownership on Garrett Cole. Adam thinks that he will be above that number. I haven't decided yet exactly where I'm setting my cap, 40, 50%. So I'll probably be close to that number also. Much better matchup for Garrett Cole than Jacob deGrom. It sounds like you still like deGrom better than Cole. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, but I think it's kind of splitting hairs when you factor in that deGrom is less, or that Cole is less expensive by $700 on DraftKings, by $900 on FanDuel. So there's going to be some lineups where maybe you just can't get to deGrom, and then the matchup certainly is more appealing. You have Matt Duffy in the lineup for the Angels. He doesn't strike out a lot. He's not very good, but he doesn't strike out a lot. But and David Fletcher is a tough strikeout. But other than that, I mean, Trout and Ohtani are really good. They also will strike out. No Jared Walsh drives down this team's strikeout percentage as well. So as far as Angels lineups go, this one I think is not as good for strikeouts, but still nitpicking when you're talking about Garrett Cole with the second highest strikeout percentage among qualified starters in baseball.
Okay. Yeah, I think the Garrett Cole analysis is easy. He's a great pitcher. If you can afford him, makes sense to play some Garrett Cole. Sandoval on the other side looks interesting in the top pitcher stool, coming in at 1.1% projected ownership with an 11% chance of being a top 2 pitcher on the slate, 5.2% chance of being a top 2 value pitcher on the slate. But he's playing the Yankees. Do you think you're going to be getting to Patrick Sandoval at all?
I would be surprised if I do, but I do think he's somebody like, if you're listening to me talk about the Braves and saying like, screw you, I don't care, I'm playing a ton of Braves, which is reasonable, like it's a really good spot. I think if you're if you're building a lot of lineups like that, I think Patrick Sandoval becomes more interesting to you, or should, because it is a tough matchup against the Yankees. But Sandoval is actually a quality pitcher. He has a 24% strikeout percentage against righties this year, only a 121 expected ISO, 23.6% strikeout percentage against lefties. His actual ISO to lefties this year is 0.01, which I thought was a made up number. Josh confirmed it this morning. Not that there are many lefties in the Yankees lineup, but just a ridiculous number. But he's been good against righties too. So like I think that if you are playing popular stacks, Patrick Sandoval does give you the upside despite the tough matchup where you can get a really low owned pitcher. For me, I think it's more likely that I am just, not getting to the most popular stacks, but it's going to allow me to just get so much DeGrom and Cole that I probably personally don't get much Sandoval.
Okay, yeah, I think that was a really good analysis. He does make sense in some lineups, depending on what kind of lineups you like to build. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to be getting to a ton of Sandoval either. What about the other side of the game? The Yankees are coming in at only 4.4% projected ownership. I guess probably because of this matchup. They're also in LA, where it's not the best stadium for hitting home runs. How much interest do you have in the Yankees today?
So Josh actually corrected me on that the other day. LA's actually been
Oh no.
solid.
You talked about it yesterday, how you had said something wrong, and as I was saying, I was like, "Oh, could this be the one where I have bad assumptions in my head?" And it sounds like it's a bad assumption.
They are 6th in home run park factor on ESPN this year,
Wow.
and 4th in runs.
Okay.
The park. Yeah. So they've been good apparently since, because they moved the wall in. I think it was 2019, and it's been good since then. But yeah, I'm interested. I mentioned all the good things about Sandoval, as far as, if you wanted to play him at low ownership. But I'm interested in the Yankees here because they're not getting much ownership either. They are projected to go under owned, 7% chance of being the top stack, about 4% aggregate ownership. And that ownership is also somewhat skewed by Aaron Judge, projected for 13%. Next highest is LeMahieu at 7, Stanton's at 4, everybody else is sub 3. This is a team where I can get a lot of upside because they have a lot of power. I can get low ownership to offset my Garrett Cole, Jacob deGrom ownership. And there's enough value here too. Like LeMahieu's only 4,500, Donaldson's only 4,600, Cabrera 2,600 with shortstop outfield. So there's 4 spots you can play him at. Trevino is a cheap catcher. So I think that there's just a lot of appeal to getting to the Yankees here for a variety of reasons, even though I do think Patrick Sandoval is a good pitcher.
Okay. Do we need to talk about the Angels against Garrett Cole? Any interest?
Good point in chat also. It's like 90 degrees in Anaheim today.
That helps.
Yeah, I don't think that I need to mention too much about the Angels. Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani are always really good. If you're looking to leverage against Garrett Cole, obviously those guys are playable. Luis Rengifo, second base, third base, batting cleanup, 4K, he's fine. But I'm not going out of my way to target against Cole. If I can only play the Angels or the Dodgers, I think I'm playing the Angels.
Interesting. Okay.
Just a better park, better hitting conditions, worse pitcher, which is nuts to say, but chances are just not playing either. But okay. I would play the Angels before the Dodgers, I think, which just feels ridiculous given how good the Dodgers are.
Yeah, that's it's very interesting. But all right, we are almost at 5 o'clock, so we almost have to turn over. We got one game left though before we do. Phillies at Diamondbacks. We've got Bailey Felter on the mound for the Phillies, Tommy Henry for the Diamondbacks. I don't know who these guys are. Do you have interest in playing them?
Not a ton. I do think it's worth mentioning on Bailey Falter that the Diamondbacks are running out, their D lineup today. There's no Carson Kelly. There's no Rojas. There's no Corbin Carroll. This lineup is about as bad as it gets for the Diamondbacks. It is a good park to pitch in. I don't think I go too crazy off the board at pitcher today, but if you are looking for a contrarian pitcher, 7,100 for Bailey Falter against this lineup, I think is at least reasonable. 28.8% strikeout percentage at AAA this year, 21.5% so far in the majors. But again, nothing that I plan on prioritizing. For Tommy Henry, I don't have any real case to make for him going up against the Phillies.
Okay. I think I'm with you on Bailey Falter. I think that is really interesting. We come in at 1.9% projected ownership, 11.4% chance of being a top 2 value pitcher, 6.8% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. So if I don't get there naturally, I might actually give a little boost to get to Bailey Falter. Sometimes I like these pitchers that I don't know as well. And he was good in AAA. So I think I am with you. Some interest in Bailey Falter. What about the other side of the game? Do you have interest in these stacks, Phillies or Diamondbacks? How much interest do you have?
I had a lot more in the Diamondbacks this morning when I thought they were going to play a real lineup. But They look okay. I mean, Emmanuel Rivera's hitting third. He's cheap. Walker has a lot of power hitting cleanup. Stone Garrett, not any sort of prospect, but he's only 2,100 hitting fifth. So I can see kind of getting to them from a value standpoint, and they're getting a little bit less ownership than other teams, but it has come up since this morning as well. They're up to 7%. On the Philly side, I do think that is a pretty interesting stack. They're only projected for 8% ownership, 12% chance of being the top stack. Tommy Henry has struggled so far in the majors, had some decent strikeout numbers at AAA, if I remember correctly, but wasn't great at run prevention there. And then so far this year, 19.2% strikeout percentage, 190 expected ISO to righties. So Hoskins, Alec Boehm, JT Realmuto, Segura, Vierling, like those guys are all going to look good. You can play Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber against anybody. So the Phillies at their current ownership, I think, look pretty appealing.
Yeah, the Phillies look really good. They are number 2 in terms of our top stack odds at 11.7%. If that 9% ownership holds, I will definitely have a lot of interest in the Phillies as well.
Open roof in Toronto, so better for bats there.
Awesome. That's and they are already our top stack team. So yeah, Toronto's looking very good. Adam, anything else that you want to say before we sign off?
The Mets Dodgers game should be a lot of fun to watch too. So either go watch Gunnar Henderson for the Orioles or watch some Jacob deGrom.
Is that going to be a tough decision for non-Orioles fans? I don't know. I guess maybe you want to see the new prospect. I guess there's some merit to watching the Orioles over that game. But anyway, guys, on your way out, please remember to give us a like and subscribe so you can keep up with all of our shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and much more. Once you subscribe, hit that notification button to get alerts when our shows go live. We've got Eric and Greg coming up next on MLB Live Before Lock, so stick around. Thanks for watching.
What's going on, everybody? Eric Lindquist at Stokastic here on the Odd Chopper channel, coming to you with my 4. Yes, you heard me. 4 favorite prize picks here for today. I don't know why my hand was going that way. Hit that like button, subscribe button, and notification bell as we get going here. I'm excited about this card. I think there's a lot of value here in the afternoon, and I think it's all in one place. We're finally back on track with something that I love to do over on this program, trying to 10x your money with some power play stuff. But you can get up to $100 right now. Right now, if you haven't signed up over at PrizePicks yet, by depositing and using promo code AWESEMO right there, AWESEMO, the former name of our company, of course. Still use promo code AWESEMO, get that $100 first match deposit bonus. All right, we ride, my friends, and oh my gosh, this is gonna kind of be a quick one because I think there's 3 spots that I really want to be targeting for home runs on today's board. We haven't played a lot of these home run props lately. And yesterday, 2 for 3. It was very sad that, against a lefty, you saw Brandon Nimmo get 2 hits because that graded out so well for me. But 2 for 3 on yesterday's card. If you didn't power play it, yay for you. You still found a way to make a little profit, but I prefer the power play, the way the payouts work. And one reason I love to do them is you get these home run props, and there's some correlation that can be had here. And this is all about Paul Goldschmidt. And then Dylan Carlson and Albert Pujols. Do double check to make sure Dylan Carlson ends up in that lineup. If he's not in that lineup, we don't want this card. We don't want this home run prop. That's how it works. Albert Pujols, Paul Goldschmidt, these 2 guys against lefties. I never thought I'd see the day that Albert Pujols was like better than plus 300 here at this point in his career. He's like 44. I mean, he's infinity years old. It's just absurd what we're witnessing out of him. But we want the more than 0.5 home runs here in Cincinnati. And Mike Minor, best of luck to you, my friend, because you get to deal with a guy with over 250 WRC plus against left-handed pitching. That is Paul Goldschmidt. He is by far the best hitter in baseball, in all of baseball, against left-handed pitching. And I know, oh, Eric, he's been bad the last 2 days. Who cares? I really don't care at all. The man has a 500 expected slugging on the year. I'm looking at him. I mean, obviously they didn't put him and Arenado together for this one for a reason, and that makes a lot of sense. But of course, when we correlate these, we got to find which Paul Goldschmidt prop makes the most sense to put it together with. There's really only 2 options here. I think you can't really go wrong with either. I mean, got him projected over 10.5 fantasy points here. 1.5 total bases is really, really small. I'm going to go the 1.5 total bases just because I think that just looking around the board that one makes a little bit more sense. So that is our starting point here. Paul Goldschmidt, Dylan Carlson, and Albert Pujols. Now, of course, if you don't get Rizzo in this lineup here for the Yankees, I am looking at the Phillies and Rhys Hoskins. I will correlate some Rhys Hoskins. I think that's the other spot. He's like plus 250 around the industry to hit a home run there. But come on, fam. Come on. I love Pablo Sandoval. I like what we've seen out of him. If it weren't for a David Fletcher error, I was watching that whole game. I don't know why. But David Fletcher had a big error. Pablo Sandoval, none of those were earned, but he would have had a big outing against the Rays last time out if it weren't for that. But guess what? It's a lefty against Judge, Donaldson, and Rizzo's in there just for fun, I suppose, but maybe a righty comes in out of the pen. This is really everything to do with Aaron Judge at the moment. You have 0.5 runs, 1.5 total bases, 8 hitter fantasy score. You could literally put any of those together. I like the Aaron Judge one because the over of runs, because in terms of correlation, Donaldson and Rizzo are going to be batting behind Judge, who's been batting third here. Donaldson's generally been around fifth, and Rizzo's sixth when they're facing left-handed pitching. So the correlation makes a little bit more sense going that direction, where you could just get on base with a walk or a single. One of those guys hits the home run, boom, it covers across the board. So I think correlation-wise, it makes more sense, even if I believe 1.5 total base is probably the best one to take advantage of there. So I am looking at Paul Goldschmidt, Dylan Carlson, and Albert Pujols over a 0.5 total home runs. Paul Goldschmidt, 1.5 total bases here. Judge, who just hit his 51st, by the way, seems pretty good. He's leading the AL by 21 home runs. He's already hit one in each portion of this in Anaheim. It's a park factor thing too. Anaheim is a really good ballpark for home runs, and people don't understand that. So I'm going to just continue to ride it here. And then Aaron Judge over 0.5 runs. We want a power player. We're going to go 10x our money here. Try to hit a big one right out of the gate. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Guru. Let's make this happen, my dude. Hit that like button, subscribe button, and notification bell as we get out of here. And most importantly, use promo code AWESOMO to get that $100 first match deposit bonus. I know this was a fast one today, but it didn't need a whole lot of explaining. I mean, when you can correlate like this and you can get Goldschmidt and you can get Judge together, both better than plus 250 to home runs, but I think they're like plus 230 and plus 220. You get a phenomenal opportunity to correlate and 10x your money. Way better to play this at PrizePicks than any book, period, end of story. I don't even want to hear any of that nonsense. PrizePicks is the best spot that you can possibly play these home run plays today. So take advantage. I'm Eric Lindquist. Best of luck in the MLB streets on Wednesday night. Hot Mike, I hope for Hot Mike.
Oh, damn. That would have been great.
Oh, I know.
That would have been great if it was live.
Oh, I was hoping it was Hot Mike. Oh.
All right. 3, 2, 1. What is going on, everybody? It is time for a little bit of Stokastic MLB Live before lock. Eric, did you miss doing shows with me? Are you happy? Are you happy you're back here?
I don't know. The last time we did a show together, you won $50K. So I welcome back, Eric. I can't wait to run it back on Wednesday, Eric. Appreciate you, Eric. It's fine.
I'd rather make fun of Tyler. I'd rather make fun of Tyler and wish ill things on him in between shows starting.
I was hoping so badly. There's times where something gets said right before, and then it just gets cut off. But like, Tyler's the kind of person who I'm kind of surprised that wasn't Hot Mike. I feel like Jordan Klein's very like, all right, guys, we're gonna go Hot Mike now. We're gonna go Hot Mike. Where Tyler's just like, F it, we'll do it live.
We missed it. I'm talking. We missed it by a fraction of a second, Eric. Like,
yeah, I'm not gonna be able to recreate. I'm not gonna be able to recreate it, but we're just going through we're just going through some protocols of what we would do if Tyler's producing a show and if he died while he was producing it. And I think it would be good content. I don't think there's any way that it wouldn't be a positive for the show overall. But that aside, guys, thank you very much for joining the program. Like the video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Eric and I back together. We don't get to do a whole lot of shows together at this point in the baseball season, tip to tip, because Eric's a big timer now. He's got his big MLB betting videos. Eric's tell the people what is leans, likes, and locks. Do I have the right order?
See, you got it correct. See, yeah. It's starting to catch on with the people. Lindy's leans, likes, and locks over on the Odd Chopper channel. I swear to God, this video takes 4-6 hours sometimes. Only 8 games tomorrow. So Jordan Klein, if you're watching, congratulations. You won't have to be working till 10 p.m. tonight.
And we've got maybe Tyler to fill in if disaster doesn't strike. Who knows? So if anything was to happen.
Does anybody hate working more than Tyler? I'm going to go no.
So here's the deal with Tyler for the people at home who wouldn't know this. Not only does Tyler not like working, he doesn't like not working either. Like, he's no matter what the situation is, Tyler has a grievance with it. If he's working, it's the wrong hours. If he's not working enough. Everything's a problem.
One word,
all
Mr.
he likes is
efficiency.
All he likes is door dashing toast. Other than that,
and
Bruce.
That's
and Bruce.
No. Someone, if you want a chocolate lab, you can have him. I'll give him away at this point.
Yeah, that's also he hates his dog. He hates his dog.
Does hate his dog.
Yeah, everything. His hours aren't correct. If he's working in the morning, he wants to be working at night. If he wants to be working at night, he wants to be like everything. Nothing ever comes up Tyler, unfortunately. But one day it's going to be his day, and at the very least, like the video and
he's going to create an NFT that takes over the world, and we are going to be begging at the altar of Tyler. I feel that coming in my life. Like I definitely think if you had to bet on somebody to become a billionaire tycoon that is on our staff here at Stokastic, who do you pick? I would pick Tyler. All
right. If I was making a list of everybody at the company 1 through 100 of who's most likely to be a billionaire, Tyler would be 102 on the list. Like he would be so far down. It is so implausible to me because it would require him doing something. Like
that's in percentages. That's in percentages. 102%.
I just don't know anybody who's going to become a billionaire. It's like if he's on, he's on 60 Minutes and interviewing him. Like, what happened? He goes, all right, well, I smoked my bong and then I ordered some toast to my house. And then I just don't know where the story goes from there. It seems implausible to me.
This is just incredible. Gundacker in F1 driver pole vaulting NFT. That is so good.
You're just combining all the, yeah.
Oh my God. Honestly, this is one of my favorite starts to a show ever. I wish we had producer Cam for Tyler. The fact that we don't is kind of an oversight here at the site, and we need to fix that and rectify that problem immediately.
Yeah, rectify. Good word. I like it.
Thank you.
We've got a comment from Seth in our Discord channel. If you guys want access to our Discord channel, as well as access to all of the tools that we have over at stokastic.com, you could sign up right now to a Stokastic Plus Platinum package. And if you use the promo code MLB Live, you get 50% off your first week of the package. And it has everything you're going to need to build winning MLB lineups. And of course, it's going to be covering stuff like football, which I don't know if you heard, starting soon, basketball when that starts. We've got the top batters tool, top pitchers tool, top stacks tool. And we've got a lot of cool stuff coming down the pipeline for football as well. But also, you get access to our premium Discord channel. So if you guys have any questions and you're watching on Discord, send us some of your questions. So Seth has a question for us. And as per usual, Seth, always insightful in the Discord channel. You and Eric working together has inspired spelling grammar already here, but I'll read it as is. You and Eric working back together has inspired I am going to ask me wife's boyfriend if I can move from sleeping in the shed to the couch. Also, do you prefer Cole or DeGrom on FanDuel? Okay, so this is really important because this is the difference between him sleeping in the shed or the couch tonight. So we're going to start with pitching right now. We've got 2 pay-up options on the slate. We've got Jacob deGrom and Garrett Cole. The 2 guys who are picking up the most ownership on DK, nearly 50% for both of them. Over on FanDuel, 28% for Garrett Cole, actually 20% for deGrom, so a little bit less than what Lance Lynn is picking up at a cheaper price point. Of the 2 of them, it's a tough call. I'm leaning towards DeGrom for the lower ownership. And because he's DeGrom, when he's on, I think he's totally unhittable. It doesn't even matter that the matchup is against the Dodgers. So my lean is towards DeGrom today, but I'm playing a whole bunch of both of them. Eric, do you have a preference between Cole and DeGrom?
No, I don't. So this is kind of the interesting thing about this show. Everybody wants us to have a take. Like everybody is like, Eric, who do you like today? Greg, who do you have better, DeGrom or Cole? I have them projected for the exact same within like a fantasy point, and it's slightly going towards Jacob deGrom, but then he's the more expensive option. So like for me on DraftKings, you play a lot of both of them. They're within 6%. I don't have a take between the 2. Obviously, is the matchup against the Dodgers better than it is against the Angels? I would definitely say so. I think the Angels have more strikeouts overall, but then Jacob deGrom, the guy's nearly a 45% K percentage. Like, what are we even like arguing about here? He's obviously, when healthy, the best pitcher in baseball. So like he can overcome any matchup, even the most difficult matchup you could have. For FanDuel, I'm with you, where if you're going to give me Jacob deGrom under 20% and Garrett Cole is going to be closer to 25, sounds great. We got to be paying close attention to that as we get closer to lock, because I think I'll just prefer the one who's lower owned between the 2. I'm not playing FanDuel today, so I don't have to think about it as much. But for DK today, the answer is just playing a bunch of both of them.
Yeah, so DK both. He did ask specifically for FanDuel.
Yeah, so if you made me pick right now, I pick Jacob deGrom for the 5% difference. Yeah.
Yeah, and while Cole is cheaper, it's not like it's a crazy difference in salary on FanDuel. $900, it's an upgrade of one hitter over the course of the lineup. And we've talked about this a lot. It's not all that hard to find salary savings on DraftKings or FanDuel at this point of the season. So my lean is towards DeGrom, particularly because it looks like he's going to come in with quite a bit less ownership right now on FanDuel, 20% to 28%. My go-to guy is going to be Jacob DeGrom there. Another super chat here, question from William Westry. He's saying, won a couple dollars because of you guys. No questions, though. Just keep it going. Thank you very much, William. We appreciate your support, and thanks for checking out the show. Let's talk about some of the other pitching options on the slate. And I think you and I are on the same page when it comes to pitching in terms of I'm trying to get to as much of Cole and DeGrom as possible. And I'm frankly not even really getting to all that many other pitchers. It kind of seems like that's where you're at as well.
Yeah. How could it not be? Like for me, this slate is just so obvious. And I guess the big question mark is Lance Lynn and how much you want to get to him, because you were the guy who last week kind of talked me into getting to more Lance Lynn and kind of recognizing some of the changes that he's made. The velocity's back. You said, oh, Lance Lynn, we're going right back to him. He's fixed. He's fine. It's just a question of how much do I actually want to get to a guy who's a substantially worse strikeout guy than we have on other slates. So like Garrett Cole going up against the Angels, that's as good of a strikeout matchup as you can run into. Jacob DeGrom, it's a very difficult matchup, but I feel like his talent just supersedes anything that you're looking at. So like, give me the guy with crazy strikeout upside in bunches there. Plus, we have to talk about how DraftKings has really put together a bunch of 2K players at pretty much every position. And so like, if that didn't exist, I would maybe get away from it, but you want to be building a lot of 5-mans. I don't really need as many of like the 5-3, 5-2 type builds. Give me 5s with a lot of one-offs with these 2K guys, and it is so easy to still get whatever you want.
Yeah, I am getting to a lot of DeGrom and Cole, just echoing what I said before. And when it comes to Lance Lynn, I'm well underweight to the field on him. And like you mentioned, I am back on Lance Lynn now in general, in terms of I'm buying into him once again being a very good starting pitcher. But the field is reacting in such a crazy way. So the FanDuel ownership, for instance, Lance Lynn is 25% projected owns. Garrett Cole, 28%, Jacob DeGrom, 20%. So he's right there with them. He's more popular than Jacob DeGrom. Over on DK, he's a little bit less popular, but it's not anything crazy. He is 43%, 46% for Cole, 45.5% for Jacob DeGrom in our current projections. With that in mind, if I'm playing the most popular pitchers on the slate and Lance Lynn's among them, I strongly prefer DeGrom and Cole, especially because I just have found that I don't need the salary savings that much.
I'm with you. Yeah, I think we were pretty much on the exact same page last week when it came to just about everything when it came to pitching. I think it's just a very clear-cut slate for that. I don't think you need to get cute with it. I think you should be spreading out offense a lot. I think you should give yourself a lot of opportunities with a lot of different stacks, but the field is reacting appropriately, and I just still think that there's a lot to uncover just by playing more DeGrom, more Cole, and just getting away from some of these other pitchers. Now, I do have one or two guys that are going completely unowned, like we're talking completely unowned, that I want to get to 5-10% of, but I'm going to be north of 70% on both DeGrom and Cole. It shouldn't be that difficult.
Yeah, and then if you're doing that by default, you're going to come in underweight to the field on Lance Lynn because he's projected to also be so popular that if you're going to be overweight to DeGrom and Cole, it's basically impossible to be overweight to Lynn as well. So of the three most popular pitchers on the slate, pretty easily the one I like the least relative to their current projected ownership. But then moving down, we have another couple.
Hold up, one last question before you do it.
Mm-hmm.
How much Lynn did you get to?
Let's see. So right now,
DK,
my lineup's
because FanDuel I would play like next to 0. I'm pretty positive of that if I were playing FanDuel today. But DK, I'm just curious how much Lynn you got to.
Around 10% right now.
Yeah, I have 12. That's perfect.
Yeah, it's loading up on DeGrom and Cole, and then there's other pitchers that we could talk about as well. A couple guys that are picking up some ownership right now. Kyle Wright, 16% owned on DK. We got Joe Ryan right around 20%, and then 5 and 7% owned right now on FanDuel. As far as these other pitching options go, they're not totally lost in the shuffle because they're still, like I said, they're picking up some ownership. But with that said, are these guys the like as pivots off of Lance Lynn? Well, at least Joe Ryan would be more of the pivot off of Lance Lynn. I guess Kyle Wright is the salary saving option compared to Cole and DeGrom. I haven't found it necessary to get to Kyle Wright when I'm making my lineups.
No, I'm not landing on a ton of him. I mean, there's a guy right below him in Sandoval that I'm getting to around 12% of. So this is the guy that I'm kind of using as my quote unquote pivot in this range. He had a really unlucky break happen against the Rays. I was watching that game, and Fletcher kind of he fumbled a play to second base that was like a routine double play. It kept the inning alive. And Sandoval's just had some decent strikeout stuff that's popped from time to time. There are going to be strikeouts in this Yankees lineup. He can also get these ridiculous amount of ground balls. We're talking like 14 that he had 2 outings ago against Detroit, 9 against Seattle. Like these kind of outings, we're looking for upside. And I think that from an upside perspective, he's still got a 3.05 ERA. The 1.38 whip just comes from the fact that he does walk too many batters from time to time. But if you're targeting like a top 1% type outcome to try to get a little bit extra salary savings to get away from Cole or something of that sort, and then also if Cole doesn't have his best stuff and you end up getting the win through Sandoval, there's a lot of ways where I think him at 9,300 could kind of work out for you. And nobody's playing him, which is kind of the other important part of the equation. So like a guy with a 24% K percentage, that's identical kind of what you're looking at with Kyle Wright. And the Yankees, at the same time, they're super potent, have over a 4.3 implied total. It all makes sense. I like landing on him as a pivot.
Yeah, if I'm going to go off of Cole and DeGrom, which is really, like we said, not either of our preference on the slate, but if I was to go to it, it wouldn't be to Kyle Wright for only, half the ownership or so. He's nearly 20% owned. It's not enough of an ownership discount for it to be warranted, in my opinion. And the other thing also, the Rockies, they're bad against right-handed pitchers. They're bad on the road, but they don't strike out a whole ton. Kyle Wright also has seen a strikeout dip in the second half of the season. So I don't think Kyle Wright has enough upside for me to want to play as much of him as the field is. But this is then when we start talking about some of those other contrarian pitchers, like you mentioned in Patrick Sandoval. We'll talk about more of those in a second. But first, super chat from our guy, Jorge. Same lovely question as always for DK. Top low-owned main stack and pitcher, and main stacks are willing to fade with high ownership in pitcher as well. Also, thoughts on Cubs versus White. All right, so let's go part by part when it comes to the super chat. First, what is our top low-owned main stack for DraftKings today?
Our top low-owned main stack. It's probably going to be Oakland for me again. Back-to-back days.
All right, so refreshing to see where we're at on current ownership, making sure nothing has changed from earlier. And I got logged out of Stokastic, so I have to log back in and then see what the top stacks tool is showing.
We're firing you live on air.
Yeah, this is how we found out. Yeah. You were actually hot, Mike, for what you said for Tyler before the show, and now you're no longer working here.
It's like Olivia Wilde getting the person who brought up the papers to her from Jason Sudeikis during the premiere of her movie.
What? I don't even know about that. What happened?
Dude, check this out. So Olivia Wilde, she's got that new movie coming out. She ended up having that fling or whatever it was with the famous singer from One Direction. I forget his name. But anyway, Olivia Wilde was doing she's the director of this movie. And she was doing the panel for the premiere of it. And they delivered her divorce papers on stage while she was presenting. Jason Sudeikis had them legitimately do that to her. So there's that. We have a happy-go-lucky soccer movie, but yet she got summoned for court while doing the documentary. It was brutal and ruthless. And he's like, "Oh, I didn't have anything to do with it. Stop it. You could have just been like, please just deliver to her, not when she's doing the biggest moment of her career."
No. Do it. I think that is because there's nothing better than a little bit of spite. And I think that's a good way to go. I totally respect that. I love it. Damn. And yeah, I know Tyler could certainly relate to that as well.
Tough take, you two. Tough take.
No, it's absolutely fantastic. If she was, Liz, if she was, I don't know. I don't know the whole story, but if she was cheating on him and she was a dick to him, however the relationship ended, more than warranted.
Yeah. Eric, how and why do you know this? I live in LA. I am from this industry, and I like stuff like this where it's very like, ooh, juicy gossip.
I wouldn't know any of that, but Eric has informed me. I'm taking Jason Sudeikis' side. To answer the other part of Jorge's question, the Boston Red Sox. So there's a couple of reasons for this. Number one, I think Joe Ryan's too popular at around 19% projected ownership. And then we only have 1.5% projected ownership going to the Boston Red Sox. And Ryan struggled as the season went on. Remember how good he was to start the year. It was like, where did this guy come from for the Twins? He he came in a trade from the Tampa Rays, and it looked like he was potentially going to be in the Rookie of the Year mix. He got injured. He missed some time, and he's just fatigued as the season's gone on. So post All-Star break, 4.57 FIP for Joe Ryan. He's also had some home run issues at times. The Red Sox offense, it has been disappointing over the course of the year, and especially Rafael Devers in the second half. But still, I think that Joe Ryan is a pitcher right now who probably has a little bit more name value than what he's actually producing on the field. And I think this is a good spot to get to Boston at basically no ownership. And then also we're getting a little bit of leverage there because Ryan is picking up some ownership.
Look at that. That's not too bad. I still like Oakland going up against Anibal Sanchez. We've seen how many years in a row now with the sample size of him just being atrocious. Same things with James Caprillo on the other side. It's relatively hot, humid, and you have an opportunity to have two terrible pitchers on the mound. We saw it yesterday. It was a game that I was virtually all in on, and I can't believe I didn't make more than I made on. I basically just 2x'd on the slate yesterday, which was kind of disappointing, I think, for the start I had with as much Sean Murphy as I had. Obviously, no Seth Brown, even though he went 0 for yesterday. That's kind of a downgrade, but I'm still looking at the Athletics as a team I want to get to a lot of.
Yeah, I mean, the A's is not a team that I've been stacking a whole bunch lately. Last night, apparently, I should have stacked them after looking at the results. But still, I think Boston Red Sox, that's a stack that the numbers make sense.
I like it. And as a Twins fan, Joe Ryan he's not all of that in a bag of potato chips, you know?
All right. The rest of Jorge's super chat. So we talked about the first part, top low owned stack. Next is, who is our favorite low owned pitcher? So there are not that many low-owned pitchers that I like getting to on the slate. I know that you brought up Patrick Sandoval.
I do that all the time.
Yeah.
I do.
So I assume that's your answer here.
Yeah, they'd be Patrick Sandoval. I honestly have 6 players in my player pool right now, and 150 lineups. I have 6 pitchers.
I don't even know if I have one for this slate that I would want to recommend. I'm pretty cool with playing the chalk today, primarily a pitcher. I don't think you need to go heavy on any of these contrarian guys.
I would agree. You don't have to go heavy. I mean, I'm just getting some riffraff on the very cheap end. I think Marco Gonzalez, there's a case to be made to get to more than 1% of him. So he's in the pool. I have a little bit of Anibal Sanchez, not 12.8% of him. I will say that much. He's terrible. But you don't have Seth Brown, and it's still Oakland. So at the same time that I'm going to have a lot of Oakland, I think it makes sense to have a little bit of him. I have a tiny bit of Kyle Wright. We are both vehemently against it at that certain number. I don't have any Joe Ryan, so I'm with you in that regard. Lance Lynn, Cole, DeGrom. So yeah, those are my 6 along with Sandoval.
I don't have an answer. I'm just going to say I don't have one, and I'm primarily playing the chalk pitcher. So that's how my lineups are built. I don't want to tell you to go play somebody that I'm not playing myself, really. Next part of his question is, what is a high-owned pitcher that we like fading? I'm well underneath the field on Lance Lynn right now. I think points per dollar, he's a good option today. I'd just rather play DeGrom and Cole. Eric had echoed similar sentiments before. And then what is a high-owned stack that we are going to be lower on today?
A high-end stack that we're going to be lower on today. I'm going to have virtually a scary, disappointing amount of White Sox.
They're very popular. They're projected to be the most popular offense on the slate. Let me see if I got to any White Sox. I have
3% of them as 5-man. That's my biggest differentiation.
Yeah, I have 5%, so I'm well underneath the field, about a third of what we have them currently projected. As one-offs in more popular lineups, in less popular lineups, I think they make sense. But for 14% ownership on the aggregate, the White Sox offense has sucked for a while now, and there's been a bunch of slates where they've been popular. I don't know that they've worked out on any of these slates, have they?
Sure have not. I have 3% of them as a 5-man. So yeah, I think the field is very, very much incorrect in that one.
All right, so we're on the same page with that, and we've covered all the aspects there of Jorge's question, but getting back to pitching, I feel like we've kind of summed it up because there aren't really that many talking points, but is there anything else for you at pitcher we've not mentioned you want to bring up?
No, I basically said it. I have 6 pitchers in 195 lineups that I have on DraftKings.com today. That should just think about that. That is kind of wild. And it's not like it's a 15-game slate either. So you play the slate that's in front of you. And the slate in front of us has 2 guys who are worlds better from a strikeout perspective. One that's worlds better in a strikeout perspective, but gets a very difficult matchup. I think you just simply do what the field's doing and you get above these 50% type numbers on both of them. And you kind of figure it out in other places. And for me, that's shorting the White Sox, shorting some other spots. I mean, Atlanta, we'll see how popular they end up. I still have pieces of them scattered amongst a bunch of lineups, but I think it's a really great slate to be playing the chalk pitcher.
All right, so let's talk about our sponsor for the show. It's Odd Shopper. If you guys have not checked out Odd Shopper yet, you have to have, because you've listened to us talk about it a million times at this point. You've probably heard us talk about Odd Shopper.
You need to do the thing that we're talking about.
Yeah. But if you haven't, here's the reasons why. It's free, number one. It's also really simple to use. And if you're betting on sports, the number one thing you want to make sure you're doing is getting the best number possible. And one of the reasons that's going to make a whole lot of sense is we're about to talk about a strikeout prop that I like for today. And there are different numbers available on different pitchers. So for instance, I like the under 7.5 strikeouts for Lance Lynn today because it's 7.5 at FanDuel, but BetMGM, Caesars, DraftKings, every other book has it at 6.5. So why would I ever bet an under 6.5 number when I could bet it under 7.5 somewhere else? And it's a lot easier than looking at the line at every single sports book. You just go to Odd Shopper and you see what all the lines are at the different books in front of you. So that is one bet that I like for today. Under 7.5 strikeouts for Lance Lynn. So Lance Lynn, really popular in DFS today, Eric. A lot of people are playing him. Sportsbooks seem really high on him as well with a 7.5 strikeout prop. Do you think that number's a little bit too high, though?
Yeah. I mean, look at the Royals lineup. Like there's some changes that they've made. I mean, he broke the slate yesterday to a certain capacity. If you had Prado, you were in really good shape. One of the best hitting prospects in baseball. So you put him into the lineup. Yeah, he's got a 34.6% K percentage, but you know what else he'll do? He'll also inflict damage that can make your outing go longer. So, hey, that's problematic. There are some strikeouts. Drew Waters, 25%, even at AAA. Michael Massey. But then you also get Nicky Lopez, back half of it, Bobby Witt, and Hunter Dozier. As bad as Hunter Dozier has been, he's been sub 24% in the K department. And you just look at Lance Lynn, around 25.2% on the season, but giving up so much hard hit. I do think Kansas City's a contrarian stack, and you can definitely get some contrarian pieces. I feel like they're a team that always kind of litters throughout my process. It's something that Adam and I have talked on deeper dives before, where it just seems like 2 and 3 mans of this team end up in a lot of our lineups. And I just kind of see Lance Lynn as not being the kind of guy that he once was. So at the same time, you've talked about the velocity being back. Things have looked better for Lance Lynn. I still think 7.5 is a gigantic number to be reaching here.
And once again, it's something that indicates something is value. It's 7.5 at one book and 6.5 everywhere else. That's such a big difference and such a big jump for him to have to get to 8 strikeouts. That's his ceiling for the season. The most strikeouts he's had in any single start is 8. So you need him to have what's the equivalent of his best strikeout start of the season, just hit the over. He's been under that mark way more often than he's been on the under. So that is a bet that I like. Lance Lynn under 7.5 strikeouts. We've got a couple more super chats to answer. First, we'll have one here from Pete Widers. He's saying Cole or DeGrom for single entry. He's rolling with Kyle Wright as his other pitcher. All right, so let's pull up the player comparison tool that we have now here over at Stokastic. Good use for it. We could plug in Jacob deGrom on one end and Garrett Cole on the other end and see what it is that we have spitting out here. And right now, is there an ownership update?
Hope so. That would be lovely.
Let's see, because the numbers are different looking here right now. So let me give this a refresh and see where we are at now. Current ownership. There was. All right. So DeGrom's now quite a bit more popular than Garrett Cole. We've got DeGrom now projected for 50% ownership on DK compared to 39% for Cole. And then over on FanDuel, it's gotten tighter. DeGrom's still less popular, 20% to 22%. Lance Lynn really picking up more steam now, 28% owned on FanDuel. On DK, Lance Lynn now at 44%. So he's actually more popular right now than Cole. Now, with that said, right now, if you look at the head-to-head between DeGrom and Cole, we have DeGrom outscoring Cole more often than not, 56.5% to 43.5%. I know that we now have DeGrom being more popular than Cole over on DK, but I'm still going to prefer to go towards DeGrom over Cole. Now, to the other part of your question, you said that Kyle Wright is your SP2. I'd rather play DeGrom and Cole than play DeGrom or Cole with Kyle Wright. But if it's one or the other, I'm still going to be leaning towards DeGrom. We do have him outscoring him a little bit more often than not, at least according to our projections.
Find the money. Find the money. Just find it.
All right, so let's move over to offense now, and we can start with a super chat we have here from Cyber Real Estate. Hello, Cyber Real Estate. Who is your one pick for outfield today? Well, I don't know what DFS contest you're playing. We're only playing one outfielder, but that aside, which outfielder do you have the most exposure to in your builds right now, Eric?
Julio Rodriguez as a one-off. I have an insane amount of the hero of the people, my 30K savior himself. I'm getting to an absolute ton of him. I'm getting to a lot of Seattle, and that's kind of the way that my slate is going to roll with. Tyler Alexander is no good. He is very bad. This is a team with a bunch of righties here in Seattle going into Detroit, and Detroit plays really, really long in terms of home runs, but it is one of the best parks in baseball for doubles, triples, things that, I don't know, pretty much everybody in the Seattle lineup that's from the right side, which is Rodriguez, France, Haniger, Suarez, Santana. You get Abraham Toro is terrible at the bottom of the lineup, but Haggerty at the bottom of the lineup, I think, is all right to be throwing into stacks. I just think Seattle is going to be one of my major stands. They're not like crazy negatively leveraged, but it is just a team that when you look at Alexander with a 500 expected slugging on the other side, gives up massive power to righties and only a 12.3% K percentage. Guys like Julio Rodriguez, who strike out 27% of the time, if you tell me that you're not going to miss his bat, I absolutely want to be as invested as possible to one of the best players in baseball.
All right. So he did follow up and he said that he's asking us because it's for a jock market. He's trying to figure out, I guess, who to place IPO bids on. So I will say this in terms of, I don't know what the prices are on jock market right now, but in terms of who I think has the most points per dollar value, the player that I'm playing the most as a one-off today, it is Stone Garrett. And it's generally not the type of player I like, an older minor league player who didn't really have all that much success in the minor leagues. But I do like the matchup that he has today against Bailey Falter, and he has raked since he came up to the big leagues. If I'm not mistaken, I think he has double-digit fantasy points in like all but one of his starts so far at the big leagues. So at least to this point, I don't think they've figured out the right way to pitch to him, and that is something that I think is a benefit to young hitters getting called up from the minor leagues. Is there's an adjustment period where pitchers don't really know. All right, where am I supposed to pitch this guy? What zones is he weaker in? What pitches is he weaker against? And so I don't think that Bailey Falter is going to find, I don't think that Stone Garrett is going to find long-term success at the big league level. But at least for now, while pitchers haven't figured him out, and he is a good matchup against Bailey Falter, that's a value play I like a bunch. So I assume he could be had for cheap on jock market.
Do you think Bailey Falter is going to falter?
Oh, I do.
Okay.
For $1 billion, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, I think we're going to turn him into a billionaire, and then he'll be the real one who's the billionaire around here before Tyler.
$1 million isn't really a lot of money anymore. Oh, the boss need the info.
You know who $1 billion would be a lot of money for?
Oh,
all of us who are watching. This
is very true. Yes, it would be. You're on your way. You're on your way after last week, Greg.
I'm really not, though. I'm really not. Really not. That is.
Oh my God.
I mean, we could make, like, how much money does Bill Gates make in a minute? Like $120,000 or something?
Something stupid.
Yeah, we're
like
really
that,
not on our way.
Yeah, we're not. We suck.
All right, let's get on over to offenses. If you guys haven't done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, click of a button, and it helps us out a whole bunch. To start us off here, T. Lee, he's asking in our Discord channel, who is our favorite single entry stack of the day? So got ownership updated here. I am rerunning my lineups because we just got the Yankees lineup in, and I'm about to update some stuff. But
yeah, the Yankees lineup pissed me off. That's what I had the visceral reaction to, because Cabrera, shortstop outfield eligibility, not in it. Not ideal for me.
Did you have I had 10% of him in my build before.
I had right around that. And it was more of just like shortstop. Looking at that position today, I was trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do. I think I was going to get a lot of Correa, but like that's the one position I don't really want to be playing anybody from the Seattle side and in like my major stacks and everything. So now I got to figure out what I'm going to do because he was like my punt for it.
So we've got a couple of teams that do look pretty favorable for us in the top stacks tool, Toronto being one, Philly being another one. They're also fairly expensive offenses. I do think that's probably where I'm going to go, though, because I'm looking through the lineups I've built right now, and there's 3 teams that I'm considering. The Blue Jays, the Phillies, or the Boston Red Sox. The Red Sox are going to be totally unowned in single entry, right? If I play them, I'm going to be the only one. So let me see what some of those Boston lineups look like. If this looks favorable to me, I'm going to roll with Boston. Let's see if I like this lineup. Nah, I think I'm gonna end up going with the Toronto Blue Jays here.
I don't hate it. For me, here's what I'm really worried about, Greg.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm very worried because if you just look at implied team totals, Toronto's got the highest implied team total on the slate. And there's a lot of 150 guys who are going to see that, and they're just going to play a ton of them. Obviously in single entry, that's a different conversation because I think, you're probably going to run into them having higher ownership in 150, and obviously like the $15 relay throw and stuff like that than what you're going to see in single entry. I think I definitely agree with that. Plus, they're very expensive for the most part to get to the main bats that you want to get to from the Toronto side. Like even Matt Chapman is up to 5,100 now batting sixth. Bo Bichette fifth, 5,500. You got to play Biggio if you're going to be playing DeGrom and Cole. You got to play Whit Merrifield, which doesn't feel good or something like that. Luis Gurriel. I mean, it's a tough stack to really put together without having Biggio be like a stone cold lock to be in it.
Yeah, I don't mind stacking the bottoms of lineups, particularly in single entry. And I do think that what people are going to do when they stack Toronto is take the core guys and then play Lance Lynn. So I'm most inclined to play DeGrom and Cole and then get a couple of the end of the lineup bats in there in the stack.
But they're expensive is what I'm saying. Like Biggio's the only cheap guy.
Let's see. So what does my top... Well, we've also got Whit Merrifield is cheap. And there's so many cheap one-offs as well.
That's kind of the thing is figuring out. So, I mean, I'm just kind of piecing together what I want my single entry, like I'm doing a bunch of single entry 3 max stuff here as well. And, I just started trying to build out Toronto, what that looks like. It's stone cold lock has to have Biggio in it. So you're probably going to be duped in terms of like what those other bats are going to be. Hard to get to Springer and Vlad together. So that's almost impossible to do. I mean, if I just take the back half 3, so if I do Luis Gurriel, I mean, you can't even really do it. If I'll put Whit Merrifield. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you have 2K left per player.
And there's a lot of 2K players to roster today.
So that's I guess that's the path to do it, right?
Which is, more or less what my lineups are looking like right now with Toronto stacks. It's
Good
like 5 Toronto players, then we got 3 guys who are 2,200 and less. And I don't hate it.
I'm saying there's 6 players, 6 at first base that are 2K flat. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 batters that are 2K flat. And one of the, like, you get 2 cleanup guys. Prado and Pinder are 2K each. So, like, those are the guys that I keep landing on over and over and over and over and over, like Marshawn Lynch. But that's kind of it.
The other one, too, is Gurriel's cheap and not projected for that much ownership. 4,400 for Gurriel at outfield, projected for 5% ownership. That is somebody to me who makes a whole bunch of sense in Toronto lineups as well.
Yep, I agree with that. Yeah, I like Eric Lindquist on playing Cole DeGrom with 1 main stack and 3 cheap one-offs. It's like the only way you can do it. Like, I'm not really breaking any news. Like, it is so hard unless you run into like Kansas City where there's some 2K guys that you can kind of stack together. It is so hard to 5-3 on this kind of a slate. Like, I'm forcing a couple of them in, but like the necessity is you play 5 stacks and then you just hunt with a bunch of 2K guys. Like that's the only way to pull off the kind of builds Greg and I are going for today.
Yeah. And the other thing too, is at least for me, I feel like a lot of my best days that I have in MLB DFS are where I'm stacking higher owned teams, or at least high top stack odds teams, and then mixing in some of the end of the order bats. Cause those guys never really end up being that popular.
Well, yeah, you have to play them. I mean, in tournaments, like those are the guys that you need to have in your stacks and need to have the 1 or 2% guy. Like, I mean, Prado yesterday, he's 2%, but like you have him in your 5-man stack. You had 40 points from him. You only had a couple from Bobby Witt Jr. Hunter Dozier was a nothing with like 2. He's been a nothing all season long. That's a different conversation, but like that's how you differentiate in these large field tournaments. You can't just go 1 through 5 on every stack and call it a day. Now you can, when it's a team like Colorado and they're going to have no ownership, or a team like the Angels, they're going to have no ownership, and you obviously want Trout and Ohtani. So there's ways of being able to do it. But overall, those back half of the lineup guys are cheap and they end up being not very popular.
Yeah. And we got another question here from Jumpo in our Discord channel where he's saying Blue Jays and Phillies are 1-2 in top stacks, and they both have positive leverage. Is there any reason to not play one of these stacks in single entry lineups? To me, I'd say that I would consider Boston as well for really low ownership, but I do think the top considerations are the Blue Jays and Phillies. The only reason to go elsewhere would just be for pricing concerns. If you're really committed to, hey, I need DeGrom, I need to have Cole in my lineup, I want to have the best hitters. And if that's the case, like, it's just not viable at Toronto. There's a salary cap. It's not like DraftKings is going to be like, oh, you know what, we're going to grant you an exception, say you get $10,000 extra in salary spent. It's not happening. So that's really the only reason would be because of pricing. But it's still, I think that those are the top two teams to consider. They're the two offense I have the most exposure to today as well.
Okay, perfect. Which two did you say again? Just to double check.
Toronto and Philadelphia.
Okay, Toronto and Philly. That makes a lot of sense. I have a lot of Philadelphia, so I'm with you there.
So let's talk through Philly then, because to me, they're fairly similar looking to Toronto, and then they're also a little bit cheaper. So I actually think that they're probably going to be the team outside of the White Sox that the field really gravitates towards in single entry, just because it's easier to fit in the Phillies with some of the top end pitchers.
I agree. You get the back half of this lineup that it just kind of opens up a world of possibility for you. You get some expensive guys there, but Vierling has been a guy that I feel like I've just had tons of every slate. Edmundo Sosa, not my favorite guy whatsoever. I'm very low on him. I almost always am. So he's kind of a piece that ends up getting on the outs. But Brandon Marsh, Rhys Hoskins, those are also just, I'm getting some of those 5K guys. I'm mixing and matching a little bit of Harper and Schwarber, but it is primarily Real Muto, Hoskins, Bohm, over and over again with Marsh and Vierling.
Yeah, I have no lineups with Sosa right now. So
yeah, he's horrendous. So you shouldn't. I have 2%, and I might just take him out because he's projected for a little bit of ownership. Like every slate, he's almost like nearing to the point where he's like paying the rake because he's projected for 7%. It's like, all right, well, he's one of two batters you just don't have to ever worry about on any slate. Him, and there's always that Castro guy from Detroit. And it was Spencer Torkelson this season. At the beginning of the year, he's like 15%. I was like, I'll just play 0% every slate and let them pay the rake.
Yeah, well, at the beginning of the year, there was reason to think at least Torkelson was going to be good. He's one of the top prospects in baseball, and then he just sucked for a long time. Sosa, I don't think there's really any reason to think he's going to hit anytime soon. So when I said before that I like playing end of the lineup guys, it has to be end of the lineup guys with a pulse, like not some guy who's just going to go 0 for 3 most likely.
I know who it was that. So it's Kansas City is the guy that always ends up, not Nicky Lopez. It was somebody else for Kansas City that I swear to God was like 15%, a bunch of slates. And I'm just going to play 0% and let everybody pay the rake. He's not in the lineup. I can't remember his name right now.
All right. Here's a follow-up question on Edmundo Sosa. What do you think his WRC plus is for this season?
12.
It's not good. It's not quite that bad though.
53. Okay, 28. Okay, that's 53. Horrendous still.
Yeah, 53 is really, really bad. But yeah.
What was it with the Cardinals? Like specifically with the Cardinals?
It was actually pretty good. He had a 104 WRC plus last year.
I had a feeling it was better last year. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, but 104 and 96. He was a league average hitter the last 2 years. He's just been horrendous this year, and he projects really bad going forward in Zips and Steamer, 86 and an 80 WRC plus. But yeah, he was really not bad in previous years.
Wild. Just wild.
Oh, that was actually 2021 was a legitimate year. 2019 was a really small sample size. He only played 8 games. So okay. I would kind of throw that out. But what we've seen from him overall over the course of his big league career, we've now seen over 500 plate appearances. He's an 87 WRC plus, just a well below league average hitter, and has really sucked this year. So no real reason for me to think that he's going to be decent. I also think that kind of goes to, remember before I was talking about Stone Garrett, which is a fucking awesome baseball name. And I said that you get some of these guys that get called up that there's no real information on. Sosa was not a ranked prospect. He was a total unknown. He had not even good success in the minor leagues, but he comes up to the big leagues and teams just don't know how to pitch him. Well, now teams have seen him play for 100 games. They figure out like, oh, okay, here's how you pitch this guy. And he's just never going to get on base again, basically. He's a 250 on base percentage, 197 batting average. That's going to happen to Stone Garrett next year as well. But for now, somebody who I think there's reason to think he could be decent. Oh my God, Josh Hader.
If him and Cooper Hummel can go together and go completely nuts, is Josh Hader getting lit up again?
No. He's about to come in. That's what. So I can't believe
I'm going to put on this game.
The worst pitcher in baseball right now. So I had, before the season started, I bet Josh Hader at 18-1 to lead the league in saves, which looked phenomenal for a while. There was a point in time where he had 29 saves, and then there was Rogers, who he was traded for, was at 28 saves. And then the next best save, it was like I can't remember who it was. Somebody else was at 23. It's like, well, Hader is a massive lead. He's going to win this going away. And he has not had a single save since, nor has he even been remotely competent since. So he's coming into a 5-4 game in the 9th inning. Will Josh Hader get a save today? Will he get a loss, or are we going extra innings?
Man. Honestly, it's so fun to cheer against him. Guys, don't be a dick. Don't be a bad person. That's all I can say. And when you make mistakes, own up to them. You can apologize, and you're allowed to. So just don't be that. Easy to cheer against him. I hope he blows it. I'm put this game on. I'm going to be watching it.
For DFS purposes, extra innings is the nut situation for me. So I'm going to be rooting for extra innings.
You played the early slate?
Yeah, I did play the early slate.
Sicko.
I like the ownership a lot on the early slate. I thought there was
Are you looking good?
Like it. No, not at the moment. But if the game goes to extra innings, yes. So it's it's up in the air. But because I have a couple of live lineups that are Padres stacks.
Okay.
All right. Hit the recent outings for Josh Hader. A third of an inning with 6 runs allowed. Then needed a outing before then. All right, this was actually a decent one against Cleveland. He pitched an inning, had 3 strikeouts, but then he recorded no outs and had 3 earned runs. Before that, he got 2 outs and then was removed from the game. 2 outs, 3 earned runs. He's been a total train wreck since coming to San Diego. Let's see if he puts it together here.
Oh, I'm so cheering for him right now. Go, Josh. Best of luck to you.
From T. Lee. At Ehrenberg, Greg, extra innings equals shirtless stream. No. We've got, it's funny. So first batter, actually a weak hit ball at the end of the bat, and he gets screwed by BABIP block, and a ball dunks in for a single.
The best starts believing in Ghost Stories.
T. Lee wants to know if this game goes to extra innings, who get a shirtless stream. So there's going to be a couple issues with that. Number 1, Neil Orfield isn't here today. Point 2 is that the stream is likely going to be over by the time that this inning's over and we figure out what's going to happen. So yeah, who knows? Maybe if we get some of those dollar super chats and we know Eric won't be able to resist dancing. All right. I voted for extra innings just because it's what I want. Yeah. Let's talk about other stacks. In terms of ones that we have not talked about, we talked about the more popular stacks, the ones that we're getting to the most. But what are the other stacks that are rounding out your lineups that we haven't talked about yet?
Washington. We haven't talked about Washington at all. It's just another super cheap team that's pretty easy to stack up. You get Abrams, who hasn't been good when he was with San Diego or with Washington, really, but batting 7th, flat 2K. Lane Thomas there batting 6th as well. Meneses has just been a god in the same way that, you're talking about Stone Garrett. I mean, this Meneses character just keeps smashing baseballs. Batting 2nd here today for them as well. Nelson Cruz, not against a lefty, but whatever. He's just a cheap guy that you can still get to some of. Luke Voigt, they're 3.3K for DraftKings purposes. Kybert Ruiz, decent catcher option at 3K. It's just a team that's really easy to stack up and then get to some of those expensive one-off options that can maybe go out and win you a little bit of a tournament. So really bad pitcher and James Caprillion on the other side. We hadn't talked about Washington, but wanted to give them a specific shout out too.
Something else I mentioned to Neil yesterday, and this still continues. We didn't know how to repel the sex bots from the YouTube chat. They were just tenacious with their posting. 0 sex bots ever since Neil unbuttoned his shirt on the show yesterday. Who knows if it's a coincidence? Okay. But I think we might have found out how to get them away from here. They come back. We're getting Neil back on here, unbutton the shirt a little bit, and hopefully that'll keep the sex bots away. I miss them though. I miss them.
It's gonna be okay. We'll be okay. Cooper Hummel, please hit a home run today. How about that? That'd be cool.
Cooper Hummel?
He had good AAA numbers at least. He's been terrible in the bigs, but I'll go with him and Stone Garrett. How about that for a 2-man? I've just added them to my single entry team. That'll be fun. That'll surely go well.
Well, Butthow's in the chat. He's talking about sex bots, but we know wild pitch, runner on second. So yep. We've got Butthole in the chat. I haven't seen him ask this question yet, but you just said you want Cooper Hummel to homer. That makes me think, let's do some dong picks here. Let's get some dong picks out. Is Cooper or is Hummel going to be the guy you're going to as your home run pick?
No, I've been worried about this bit because I haven't pulled this bit out on Lindy's Leans, Likes, and Locks. I haven't pulled it out on a show, but we're gonna try it.
Pull it out.
Ready?
Pull it out.
I'm gonna swing from the Langoliers, from the Langoliers. No,
say your home run pick.
Sean Langoliers.
Did you do it? Do you actually think he's gonna hit a home run, or did you just do it to make a stretch of him in a Sia song?
Bold.
All right. So Langlier's he's my most rostered catcher today. I wouldn't mind it.
It's my
highest
rostered catcher too.
I've played so much of him since he got called up because it's catcher is already kind of a shitty position. He's gotten to be a little bit more expensive on DK now, but for the longest time he was the flat manner who's 2,200, and because the A's offense is terrible, he was hitting like second and third in the lineup.
Yeah, now he's batting second constantly, so it's pretty easy to do. But honestly, I thought it was pretty good. It was an interesting one. I didn't know when or how to bring it up. This is how I brought it up right there for you.
All kinds of mixed responses in the YouTube chat. It does seem like more people liked it than didn't. I died a little bit inside. I do think it took years off my life. I have a feeling Tyler is probably more on my side with that.
For sure. He hates fun. He also hates no fun.
Not a single clue what y'all have said in the last 10 minutes at least.
Fair enough. Also, I like Eric Traub saying in chat, pull it out, Greg to Eric and no context. And then to add to that led to Eric
Sal Perez
serenading us.
Sal Perez scratched.
Oh, Salvador Perez scratched. All right, so now
that has to be good for Lance Lynn.
It does have to be good for Lance Lynn. Should we be upping our exposure to Lance Lynn a little bit for this?
I might have to get a little bit more. I mean, that's a pretty big bat. He's been one of the best catchers for 4 years now. I mean, this is something that matters. Plus, I had some Kansas City going up against him, obviously, because, Lance Lynn, we were going to be shorting him. One of the best ways to really take advantage of a bad outing would be him not pitching that well. I'm going to give him like an extra 1.5 here. I'm going to get to Lance Lynn some now. I didn't want this. I didn't need this in my life.
Well, I'm not making an aggressive change. I'll update and do a couple more lineups with Lance Lynn, but I still have to prefer Cole and DeGrom to him by a pretty significant margin. How much is this changing for you?
I still prefer them quite a bit, but we're talking. It's not like Sal Perez is a nobody. It's not like Yordan Alvarez not being in the Texas lineup this morning. Like that's markedly a better hitter and situation having Yordan Alvarez out of a lineup. But like Sal Perez is not bad. He is very, very good at the hitting of baseballs. So I just gave Lance Lynn an extra 1.2 just for the hell of it and see what happens. I'm getting to 14% of him still. So still not that drastic of a change.
Josh Hader did get the save, so the Padres end up winning. If he writes the ship and I win my 18-1 bet, I would take that as a consolation over losing on the early slate here.
I'm shocked that they have him out there closing today. Like that is bold.
Realistically, here's the deal with relievers, though. You have a couple of bad outings, and it screws up your numbers for the entire year. Josh Hader has been one of the best relief pitchers in baseball for a while. Like, is it really not the case because of his last few, like, should they totally give up on him?
I didn't say completely give up on him, but there was something mental and mechanical and multiple ways going wrong with him. Like, you could watch those outings, and Josh Hader, I can't remember a reliever. He used to be so automatic, and like, other than I say that, and then didn't he give up the Bryce Harper home run that ended up sparking the Nationals' run to win the World Series? That was the wild card game, I believe, wasn't it? No, it was Joey. It was Soto. It was Juan Soto off of Josh Hader, left on left. Juan Soto hit a 3-run homer that ended up propelling them to the World Series, and that was a wild card game that they were way down in.
Might have been. I don't remember.
I do.
I don't remember. I'll take your word for it. We did get a question in Discord channel. We'll answer this before heading out. From T. Lee. He wants to know if we could talk about the D-backs. What did you do with the Arizona Diamondbacks as a stack today? I have them. Let's see. I'm getting to a lot of Diamondbacks as one-offs, not as much as a 5-man stack.
It's just, it's kind of it's a really weird spot. Like, I'm getting to a lot of 1, 2, 3-man type things. mainly because you get those cheapies down there. Like those are the guys that I'm getting the absolute most of. So I'm not specifically going out of my way to 5-2, but it seems like I'm getting a lot of 5-2 where Stone Garrett, Cooper Hummel, like these guys are still showing up in quite a few lineups.
Yeah, I mean, Stone Garrett's my most rostered one-off today. But in terms of 5-man stacks, I'm underweight to the field on the Diamondbacks. But for salary saving options, yeah, I'm plugging in a bunch of these guys to save salary with. I've got Stone Garrett in lineups here, Cooper Hummel, so on the same page as you there. Emmanuel Rivera a little bit. He's hitting third and he's pretty cheap. So Ketel Marte a little bit, not all that much. But yeah, primary for me, it's Hummel, Garrett, and Rivera. Those are my three most rostered D-backs.
I like it.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. That is going to do it for Eric and I today. If you haven't done it already, what are you waiting for? Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. But other than that, enjoy the games tonight and good luck.